1.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
What? If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor.
What difference at this point does it make?
Doesn't make sense.
If you're looking to make sense out of what's going on in the world today, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to Southern Sense Talk Radio with your host, Annie, the radio chick Ubelis, and featuring Curtis C.S. Bennett and the most interesting guests that you'll find anywhere on internet radio. And you can join the show and let your voice be heard by dialing 917-889-3675. So sit back, relax, and remember, Southern sense is common sense.
When an emergency strikes, what's your first impulse? If your answer is run to the grocery store, you're likely to find chaos and plenty of empty shelves. So how do you avoid this? Well, it's simple. You use today to make a plan, to prepare for things that may happen. It's a hurricane, earthquake, blizzard, or even social unrest, especially in today's political environment. The practical place to start is by storing up food in your home. And I use My Patriot Supply for my food storage. If you don't have an emergency food supply, it's time to do so. Here's a great item that makes it really simple. A 2-week food kit that comes in a rugged tote. And it's only $75 when you go to my special website, preparewithsouthernsense.com, or call 888-441-7290. This food kit includes breakfast, lunch, and dinners that will last up to 25 years on your storage shelves. So order now and prepare yourself, and then rest easy. So it's very simple. Just call 888-441-7290 or go to preparewithsouthernsense.com. You know what? Let's make it even more simple than that. You're listening to my show, and it's called Southern Sense, and you know you put a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com, and click on the icon for My Patriot Food. Well, if you want to insist, you can still go to 888-441-7290 or go to my website, Southern Sense, put a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com. Be prepared.
All right, and welcome to another exciting adventure here on Blog Talk Radio, SHR Media, Lone Star Daily News, iTunes, Stitcher, Streaker, Bluetooth, whatever the heck it is. You're welcome to Southern Sense. I'm your hostess with the most, just the radio chick, Annie. And join us also up on our website. We are now also live on Facebook. With my co-host, Curtis C.S. Bennett. Curtis, we have ourselves a rock and roll lineup today. We've got former
Yes, we do.
former Lieutenant of Governor of South Carolina, Andre Bauer, will join us at the start of the show. And then we're going to have Florida Congressman Mike Hill come back on. We're going to have Lucretia Hughes, who has her own wonderful broadcast up on Facebook through Fallback Productions. She's going to join us along with Mary Bowden. She's got the Soul to Soul choreography talking about child abuse in dance and other areas. And we're going to end the show with one of the sit-in congressmen, Congressman Ted Yoho. So we're going to get into a lot of stuff today. Things are boiling up and it's all coming to a head. And we're going to see the former Obama administration just completely implode. And, oh, boy, it is going to be flying. Fur will be flying.
And I got a front row seat.
We all have a front row seat.
We got front row seats.
So we got a lot to talk about and a lot to do. We're going to do a little bit of a change-up today because Andre Bauer is coming on earlier. So we're going to do the dedication at the 3:30 hour instead of at right after the introduction. Want to welcome everyone that is joining us up on Facebook as well as in our chat room here on Blog Talk Radio. And I see they got a new type of chat, which explains why everything was so messed up the last show. So hopefully they got this all straightened out. And we'll see what happens here. Obviously, it's not completely
What happened?
Go ahead, Curtis.
What happened?
What happened was that people were listening in through Blog Talk Radio and all they heard was music instead of hearing the broadcast. But it did record on Blog Talk Radio, so if you go back to the archive, you can actually listen to the entire show. Unfortunately, you couldn't listen live on Blog Talk Radio. It looks like that issue seems to be revised. But, and also, when you looked up on Twitter, I didn't realize this. I had blocked someone a while back. And I said, well, this is a weird, screen name. And the person was trolling. And I had posted some pro-Trump stuff up there. It came back with comments, that were rather rude. And I just blocked the person. And I said, well, all right. I looked at their profile to see who it was. You really couldn't tell. It turns out to be none the less than sitting Senator Mitt Romney, going by the name of Pierre Delecto. So, if you are watching up on Facebook, I am going to put up a mime that someone just sent me yesterday on Pierre Delecto. Wait a minute. It looks like the text is blocked in the chat room. Let me try to change that because I put it in administrative mode, and I apologize. Let's see if we can change that to get it back. And it should be, try it now. It should be clear. So, Chief, try it again. Because I was getting a porn guy that kept on pushing stuff again on here. So I tried to put it in admin mode, but I've turned that off so no one's blocked, so you can enter into the chat room again. I apologize. It's something new. Blog Talk Radio changed all this all last week, which has caused all the problems. Okay, so test. Yeah, you got it. You got it. I can see you, Sasquatch. I see you in there. All right, so you can post. They just reset it up. They did a little something differently here. But if you're also attending over at Facebook, you can post up in the watch party that I have going on over there also. So feel free to post in either one. All right. We should have our guest calling in a few minutes, but there's so much that is exploding right now. I'm starting to talk about. Jim Holt just put it all together. He's brought it down to 4 different reports being released last night and indicate the days ahead will be devastating for the deep state. The first one was the Pfizer report. It's about to be released, and Fox News reported yesterday that the Justice Department Inspector General Michael E. Horowitz told the Senate and House leaders on Thursday that the process finalizing his report into potential Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the FISA, abuses ahead of the 2016 presidential election were nearing completion. The lengthy draft report concerns sensitive national security and law enforcement matters, he wrote in the letter, adding that the final report will be released publicly with few redactions. He noted he did not anticipate a need to prepare or issue separate classified and public versions of the report. Next coming up, that's going to explode, is A.G. Barr and John Durham's investigation into deep state crimes. And this was reported, believe it or not, in the New York Times that broke this story yesterday. For more than 2 years, President Trump has repeatedly attacked the Russian investigation, portraying it as a hoax and illegal, and even months after the special counsel closed it. Now, Mr. Trump's own Justice Department has opened a criminal investigation into how it all began. DOJ officials have shifted an administrative review of the Russian investigation, closely overseen by Attorney General William P. Barr, into a criminal inquiry, according to two people familiar with the matter. The move gives the prosecutor running it, John H. Durham, the power to subpoena for witness testimony and documents, to convene a grand jury, and to file criminal charges. That is blowing up big. Next, I was listening to Sidney Powell on Hannity yesterday, and she has a filing regarding General Flynn's case. So, what Jim Holt wrote about on Gateway Pundit is that late last night, Sidney Powell is aware of numerous documents and actions by the Obama deep state that have been withheld from General Flynn that were damning to the government case. They're so damning that she's asking the court to dismiss the case against General Flynn. Curtis, didn't I predict this, especially when we had Judge Jeanine Pirro on here, Fruit of the Poisonous Tree, that everything, the prosecution of General Flynn, should be tossed out? So,
yes, indeed.
My prediction is going to come true. That's the way it should be. Yep. And the fourth one regards recent reports regarding Joe Biden pay-for-play scandals. And they hinted about this on Fox News earlier today with Dana Perino. And they said another country with Hunter Biden's influence is going to come into the forefront. And as I'm walking through the room, I hear her mention this. She says, a country to be named soon. I looked at my husband and I said, Romania. And this broke last night on Romania. So Hunter Biden has a little pay-for-play through Romania while Biden himself was our vice president, attached to a businessman called Gabriel Popovici, a wealthy Romanian real estate tycoon. Now, what makes this even odder is that you've got Giuliani doing the investigation into the Ukraine. But who came to the aid of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden in putting the business deal together with this Romanian business tycoon? None other than the one, the only, Rudy Giuliani. So how can you be a partner with Hunter Biden in one incident with Romania and yet investigate him on the Ukraine? This is blowing up, folks. It is going to blow up big time. And I see people sitting in the studio switchboard. Please remember that if you do want to make a comment, ask a question, or if you happen to be our guest, press 1. Otherwise, I will assume that you're only listening in. So, Curtis, all these things that I started talking about a while ago is starting to come to fruition.
It's about time.
Yep.
I mean, look how long we've been hearing about the IG's report that's supposed to be coming out. They've been saying that for like the last 5 months.
Yep, they have been.
Finally, something is trickling out, finally.
But whoops. Oh no, we lost our guest. He was here just a second ago in the studio. I went to click him on and he dropped off. So if he's listening in, please try to dial back in. The call just simply dropped. That's not cool. That was not cool at all.
No. It's probably using a cell phone.
It's possible.
Maybe driving.
Yeah, it's possible. But I didn't even get it fast enough to get the phone number to call him back. So hopefully he will call back in. Because, like I said, there's so much to talk about. Matter of fact, Trump is here in South Carolina right now. So he's probably up in the Columbia area.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, yes. It's at the 2019 Second Step Presidential Justice Forum at the Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina. So if anything, Andre Bauer is probably with him right now up there. So I'm hoping he will have a chance to call back in. We'll see. We will see. And yes, he has. All right, let's try to bring him back on again without dropping him. And here we go. Let's welcome onto the show former South Carolina Lieutenant Governor, who I voted for, Andre Bauer. Good afternoon, Andre. How are you today?
Absolutely fantastic. How are you?
All right. So you didn't even know that I voted for you as you're here in our great state today with President Trump.
I am not with the president today. I am with my little 6-week-old baby boy, and nothing like starting out having kids at 50.
Oh, God bless, God bless. Which means you're going to have then probably some time to come down to Beaufort here and attend one of our tea parties. And yes, we're still alive and kicking.
I would love to. I haven't been down to Beaufort lately, but I live in Charleston, so I'm not that far from you.
No, you're not. No, you're not at all. But I was starting to mention that Trump is at this 2019 Second Step Presidential Justice Forum, and I had to crack up because I went onto their website, and I'm going, oh, my God, there's going to be heads exploding in that room today.
When you look at what he's done, there's a lot of folks that are probably there that might not have been fans of the president prior, but when they start hearing about what he's done with the HBUs or the HBCs and what he's done with justice reform, it's contrary to what so many of them thought the president stood for, that they've heard so long from misinformed media. But the president has gone right to the heart of the matter that a lot of people have had a burn with for a long, long time, back when Bill Clinton talked about folks. And now we've seen a right rectified and folks that'll have a second chance. Look, I years ago got to tour the South Carolina prison systems, and we had things like a frame shop and a upholstery shop where people got skills. So recidivism went down in South Carolina. We tried to do things to help folks. Look, just because you make a bad mistake once, to keep them locked up hurts the taxpayer. It hurts the families, the friends, the individuals themselves. Jail is to put dangerous people. It's not to keep folks in that did, a minimal crime or 3 strikes and you're out on a simple possession drug charge. That's just, in my opinion, from a father who was a criminal defense attorney, I just don't believe in that. I want people locked up that are a danger to society, but I don't want folks locked up for life that had a couple bad judgments with drugs.
The prison reform that they've implemented here in South Carolina with your assistance has brought a lot of people that you don't even realize, once they come out, they become part of a good sector of our society. A point in case is someone that I did business with. I didn't even know that she had been behind bars. And she's got a very successful and wonderful business right here in Beaufort. And she turns around and mentors kids coming up through school who are coming from troubled backgrounds just like hers to help them stay on the straight and narrow. Prison reform can work for the better.
Yeah, I hired a guy straight out of prison that had been a big wig owning a big company, made a bad decision, and he couldn't find employment anywhere. So I got a great deal on an overqualified person. He worked for me for a couple of years, and he's gone back out on his own now, and he's absolutely killing it. I mean, he has done so well. But you got to have somebody willing to give him a chance. But a lot of these folks are just good people. One-time Saul Blott, who's now passed away, the infamous federal judge that served up into his 90s, looked at an individual in the courtroom, and he said, I want everybody in the courtroom to look at this young man. We are all just one bad decision away from being exactly where he is.
And that's a sad point. That is a very sad point. And I'm a retired police officer, and how many times I would lock someone up. It's like, you did something stupid, and you're going to be paying for this for the rest of your life. And, I've told this story many times. I was guarding a female prisoner in the maternity ward, and she was causing such a racket. And, of course, I let my Italian temper fly. I cursed her up one side or the other, saying, these people are paying to be here to have their babies. The state is paying for you, so just shut the, blankety blank up. And a number of years later, I'm walking through the very projects that she lived in, and I see this beautiful woman pushing this healthy, wonderful baby. And she recognized me and she goes, you know what, officer, what you said to me in that maternity ward that day made me turn my life around. And she goes, thank you. So if you got the right person at the right time with the right ability to turn their mental around, maybe I might have done it in a little bit of a crude way, but it can be done.
Well, I mean, it's tough love. And years ago, the federal government tried to help people. When they created aid to independent mothers, the intention was very good. But what happened was it created a incentive to break up the family unity. And so what we need to do is come up with an incentive to bring the father back in the home. We all know statistics show if there is a male figure in the home, it helps keep the family together. It reduces the amount of criminal activity. It helps with schooling. Look, I came from a single-parent home. I know it is a big difference. But fortunately, I had a grandfather who played an instrumental role. And when my son was born the other day, I named him after my grandfather. And so we know that government can make choices that either hinder or hurt people. And for once, and I don't see much of it in Washington, but the two parties came together across party lines and got something done. And it's quite refreshing because I haven't seen much of it in the last decade of them doing that for the betterment of the people.
Not really. And he did a powerful thing when he went with this Prison Reform Act that he just recently passed and helped people, come out. And it was just a wonderful thing. But you're there working on the Trump campaign, and I had a laugh. There was a statistic that came out, Moody's Analytical, that projected that the president will win handily if the economy doesn't stumble. And I don't see it ready to stumble anytime soon. And the numbers on this are phenomenal. We've got these Democratic presidential candidates that are going to be at this forum this weekend up here in Columbia. But when you look at this, you're going, hey, guys, just park the car. The journey's over. Forget it. We're going to win.
Well, I am. Polls can't vote, only people can. At the end of the day, people have got to be excited. They come out for two reasons. Either you love the candidate or you hate him. And so he's got to make sure he has the enthusiasm he did before, because sadly, it's not South Carolina that will decide who the next president of the United States is or whether we keep the current one. There's only a few states. It's Florida, it's North Carolina, it's Pennsylvania, it's Michigan, quite possibly Nevada. These are the states, Arizona, these are the states where it could swing either way. And so those are the ones where the president's got to spend his time. And, of course, we still don't know. If it's an Elizabeth Warren, it's probably less a chance the Democrats win. But if they get a moderate like Tom's, I can't think of his last name, Steyer, he's more moderate. And Trump did a great job at getting moderate Democrats to come out and support him. Right now the economy is good, but there are a lot of factors. The president's taken on a lot of battles that, quite frankly, most leaders wouldn't do, like taking on China, and they're continuing to steal intellectual property, trying to do something with North Korea. A lot of these battles, most people wouldn't take them on because there's too much bloodshed. So it shows what a real leader will do. They'll take on what's unpopular, but some of these need to be brought to a head before next November. And so I hope the president is continuing to have success in working through some of these folks, because that will ultimately decide whether he gets another opportunity. I hope he does, because we are seeing, if you want to talk about unemployment, the lowest unemployment in the history of our country for minorities, 19 months in a row of below 7% unemployment for minorities. And in the last administration, they never once hit below 7% ever. And he's got 19 months straight. So the actions do speak louder than words. There's a lot of folks in the media that don't want to tell the true story. But at the end of the day, results are there. People are better off than they were just a few years ago. Employment's up. The economy's up. And hopefully he will continue to take on some of these monumental things that he has continued to embrace that most folks don't want to tackle. And so to see him, to get this passed, to see him free up monies that faith-based groups, faith-based colleges, historically black colleges of faith-based who weren't getting the appropriations will now be able to get those, because quite frankly, I think a lot of times dollars in the local communities are much better spent than in big brother government. And so as a guy who believes in local government, knows how to solve your problems better than the folks in Washington, I like to see that money trickle down into the community where those folks can make the best decision on how to help people.
It's a huge amen
Lieutenant
for that.
Governor.
This is my co-host, Curtis C.S.
Lieutenant
Bennett.
Governor.
Yes, sir.
It's no secret that the Democrat Party, they are counting on a lot of votes from prisoners who have been released. They've done their time and returned to society. What are your thoughts on felons regaining their right to vote?
I almost think that there needs to be a delineation between what the felony was. If you've taken someone's life, that's vastly different than if you carried a firearm into the wrong area, or it was a drug-related charge, or if it was a white-collar crime. Most felons, I think, ought to give it a second chance. If you're taking somebody's life and it wasn't in self-defense, that could get dicey. That could swing either way. But I do think there has to be some type of carrot for the person that committed the crime so they feel like they get their rights back. Otherwise, there's no reason for them to perform in a good way back to society. If you hold them down and everything's against them, why would they ever try to conform and adjust back to society if you've taken all their rights, privileges as a citizen away? So we probably could have that debate, and you probably could convince me that I'd have to think about it a little bit more, but clearly folks need to have the right to get the opportunity to vote back, especially since the Democrats have done such a good job at letting folks that aren't even with us anymore vote. There's a little tongue-in-cheek there.
Because Gavin Newsom is trying to bring into the workforce in California illegal aliens. And the next step, once they do that, would be finding some way to get them to vote. So, there is ways in which they can try to change our voting patterns. But we've got to be vigilant. And, you were when you were our lieutenant governor. Now we have to turn around and just get the right people back into office to help reverse the damage that was done by the previous administration.
We do. And part of it, I cite Republicans. We need term limits. I used to think maybe we didn't. Our forefathers never intended for this to be a lifelong career as a politician. And even the Republicans, they've gotten bad about it too. We have these folks that couldn't tell you what a gallon of milk cost anymore. And really, they may be up there for all the right reasons. But when I can tell you, as a guy who went in at 26 years old in the House of Representatives and stayed there till 40, I had a vastly different approach. And even though I went in for all the right reasons, after being there for 14 years, I didn't hang around the same people. My influences weren't the same. I was around that element and involved in that element so much so that it even changed me a little bit because you're immersed in it. All your life experiences become vastly different if you're no longer having to deal with the frustration of government, whether it's overburdensome of government when you're a business trying to make ends meet or make it work, and with them continuing to thrust new things upon you outside of taxes, just requirements. And so when you're up there all the time, you really don't get how frustrating it is, but instead you're hanging out with the lobbyists and you're playing golf with them and eating dinner with them, and they can tell you, well, all these things are so much better for the people, but the people don't see you, and you're not with them all the time, and they don't get the opportunity to give you the frustration they're dealing with, and that's another reason I think the president won. But we need more folks from the average everyday working class society making decisions in the public. Not all of them should come from one demographic. Not all of them should come from one profession. We need people from all walks of life to come together to share life experiences, to come up with the best thing that can make our country work most as efficiently and effectively as possible. And part of that comes from a deliberation of ideas. Look, there are times when I have had a discussion with folks on the other side, and I've got good friends on the other side. Darrell Jackson, a friend of mine, state senator, we always had fair and reasonable discussions, and he sometimes could give me a different perspective. When I was on CNN, which was a tough job as a Republican, Bakari Sellers one time said something to me. I said, look, Bakari, I respect where you're coming from because you were raised in a 50 miles away from me, but our upbringing was vastly different in what we had to deal with in life experiences. So I respect that you don't have the same perspective as I. And sometimes folks will give me a different approach to problem solving or a different reason for something in government, and they can convince me of their way of thinking. And that is how government's supposed to work. I know I don't have all the ideas. and nobody's got a patent on all the ideas. We need to come together and try to make things work. And I used to like the old days when Ronald Reagan would get together with Tip O'Neill and they'd have a beer and they'd hash it out and they wouldn't beat each other up in public. They'd go behind closed doors. They'd come up with ideas and they'd work together for the betterment of this country. And that's why this country for so many decades has been the world leader in 5% of the world's population dictating the world economics.
You know, it's funny because we've discussed this many times on the show here, that we need a civil conversation, one with discourse, instead of it's us versus them. And even within our own party, we're doing that to each other. I mean, I sent out a email to the members of my Tea Party recently in reference to a school bond referendum, and a fellow member of the Republican Party, I'm on the legislative committee with him in the county GOP, sent me one of these nastiest emails telling me to shut up. And we can't do that to each other. It's bad enough we're doing it to the people across the aisle, but when we do it to each other within our own party, it is extremely dangerous.
No question. What he should have done was said, tell me why you believe this way. Tell me why you think this way, and convince me I'm thinking the wrong way.
Exactly. Which is what my response to him was, you know, don't tell me to shut up. Actually, he told me basically the whole Tea Party to shut up. He says, no, don't do that. If you have something, let's have a civil discussion. These are my reasons why I oppose this. Now tell me why you think it should. And that wasn't done. He did apologize, which I have to, you know, give him kudos for. But, you know, this is what we need to do. We got to stop doing that us versus them mentality and sit down and have the conversation.
Agreed.
Well, I don't know if you are aware, but since you're in Charleston area, you may be interested out in Hilton Head. Drew McKissick, I love that man. Oh, I could just eat him up. Is having a fundraiser to help us take back the 1st District. Because, you know, Joe Beercan Cunningham is took the seat over from us. So if you want, I can send this to you. It's going to be this coming Tuesday, the 29th. At 6 p.m. out in Hilton Head. So if you want, I can send this to you.
Absolutely.
See, I keep my fingers in all the pies. But you got to do that. And if you're not educated about the subjects.
If that seat is historically, I mean, for decades, going way back before Sanford, before Henry Brown, before Sanford the first time, before... you go all the way back to Tommy Hartnett. That seat for decades has been a Republican seat. And while Charleston has shifted a little bit, the outlying counties have shifted to the R side. And so that really is a Republican seat. And with a Trump on the ballot, they will take that seat back. Make no mistake. Whoever the nominee is will be the next congressman or woman. I actually had some folks fly down from Washington and try to talk me into running in that, showed me what my poll numbers that were really good. And quite frankly, we've got some great candidates in there, and so I think we got enough good candidates that it didn't inspire me to go do it. I'm having too much fun with this little boy, but to be a dad at 50 and get to see those little eyes look up at me, that's more important than going to Washington right now. But
oh, God bless. Go ahead, Curtis.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of jousting between the federal government and the states, and I'm speaking particularly in reference to California. In other words, okay, at the federal level, the use of marijuana is a federal offense, but states like California says, we have states' rights. We have a right to, as a state, determine what's, a federal crime, a state crime or whatever, And in our state, we feel like marijuana could be used, without, consequences. Who you think going to win out in the end, the feds or the states and, states' rights?
I've always been a proponent of a constitution, a resolution of constitutional convention. Federal government, in my opinion, has gotten way too big. I can tell you years ago, seatbelts were an issue, and I voted against making seatbelts mandatory. I mean, you can still ride without a helmet on a motorcycle in South Carolina, but you got to wear a seatbelt in a car. Unless you can afford a limousine, then you don't have to. So I just, even though I wear one, I don't want the overreach of the federal government. I would rather have my local folks who I can vote in or out of office. You know, at the end of the day, we have 7 congressmen in this state and 2 senators. Well, California probably in one county has 7 congressmen. And so they're going to outvote us, and we'll never be able to fill that void. And so at the end of the day, I don't want this. Quite frankly, education's a big one. You don't educate kids in New York the same as you do in Utah. They're vastly different issues. And so we're missing the boat by all these federal dollars being shoved down our throat, but you got to do it their way. And people that are so out of touch with reality making those decisions. So I'm all about local government. It's been a battle for years, but most people that are conservative realize the overreach of the federal government is one of the most difficult things for people that try to generate the jobs and generate most of the tax base. And that's why you see people like Carl Icahn are now leaving New York. I mean, he was born there, created billion-dollar business there, one of the most well-known names in America when you talk about business, and he's leaving his birth state, his home state, and moving to Florida and moving his entire company with him because he's voting with his feet. He's had enough. And so if you have states that govern poorly, those folks, people can leave those states. But if you're within the whole mass of the United States, you don't have much of an option if they're going to overreach to every state under the country. And so I would rather us have local government within the states make these decisions and not the federal government.
Well, I completely agree with you. And Carl Icahn, I remember, back in the 70s when he interfered with the travel industry, made a mess of that. So I have no big love for that man. But he's a perfect example of the overreach of federal government.
Example, but
Go ahead.
I may have used the wrong example for you, but I just happened to read an article yesterday which made me think of it.
But it's true. You know, even whether or not they're Democrat or Republican, if you hit them in their wallet, they're going to react. And they're going to react where they're going to go where the dollars work the best. And yet they still continue to vote Democratic, which makes no sense to me.
It's crazy. And a lot of companies are leaving California and New York. Big time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and they're going to have a tougher and tougher time to fund their budget.
Now, you know, you called in because you're here with the Trump campaign, and it looks like this impeachment is starting to implode. The impeachment mania is going to end up shooting Schiff right back in his shifty foot.
I think it is. Anybody that pays even a little bit of attention to get a fake dossier to then go get a FISA warrant and get turned down the first time. You know, people laughed when the president said my building was wiretapped, but in fact he was right. And you continue to see an inappropriate use of so many of the federal agencies. You now see how the Democrats have done everything they could to impeach the president and have absolutely no facts. But in fact, when you look at issues like Joe Biden telling another country, hey, get rid of this guy investigating my son, or you're not going to get several $1 billion. And hey, my plane leaves in a few hours, and laughing about it. And they don't want to investigate that, but saying, hey, he ought to be investigated. They want to investigate. I mean, the whole thing is you can't write this stuff. It's better than a house of cards.
I know, and it's all going to implode over the next several days because Jim Holt in Gateway Pundit put it down to 4 main points, and it's going to be Hunter Biden and Joe Biden with their hands in the cookie jar because it's not just Ukraine and China. Romania is now coming into that, involving Giuliani, which makes it even all the more interesting. It's coming to light now the FISA warrants were all falsified, the fruit of the poisonous tree, and I discussed this quite a while ago with Judge Janine Pirro here on the show because she was a prosecutor in New York about the same time I was walking a beat. And I said, Judge, it's fruit of the poisonous tree. You know what I'm talking about when I say that, Andre, right?
Absolutely.
So it's all going to be coming to a head. So he's saying, get your popcorn out, folks, because it's going to be a fun ride. The deep state with the
well, the other issue is going to be that what have the Democrats done? Your other issue is going to be, sorry to talk over you, is going to be, show me what you've accomplished. 2 years now, we've had control of Congress, and all we've done is go after the president. We have no victories, and so that's going to be hard to sell to the American public that, we gave you Congress back for 2 years and we saw no leadership other than trying to impeach a duly elected president. And I think that thinking people and people that ask questions are going to say, okay, I haven't seen any accomplishments, and we gave you an opportunity to govern and you didn't do it.
Well, Andre, I want to say thank you for joining with us. I've got you on, former Lieutenant Governor here of the great state of South Carolina, and our next guest is also on the line with us, the former Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Florida. So, Andre, I want to thank you for joining us, and I'll shoot you out this information about the fundraiser for the 1st District here, and maybe I'll see you.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a blessed weekend.
You too, and God bless.
Take care.
All right, former Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina, Andre Bauer. Now we welcome aboard Jennifer Carroll. Good afternoon, Jennifer. I thought you weren't going to be with us.
No, I don't know where that scuttlebutt came from. Maybe it was the Democrats trying to preempt us.
No, we're just going to have to get a hold of Jackie a little while after I get off the air and talk to her, because somehow or other our wires got crossed over here. But we'll work it out. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I had all my notes for you, and I put them aside thinking that you weren't going to be with us today. So now I've got to start from just the top of my head about everything that's been going on. So we were talking about these cases now starting to implode in on the Democrats going after the FISA warrant and everything else that's been happening. So just bear with me. I'm sounding a little confused because Jackie threw me off a little bit.
Oh, not a problem. I appreciate being on, and I appreciate your listeners tuning in as well. It's important for the listening audience to capture information from all media outlets to discern for themselves the truth and to make up their mind and decision, not be told what to do. And oftentimes we hear the 30-second sound bites, and everybody's reacting and responding to that, or the Twitter that comes out, and before you know it, fabricated information is being disseminated across the world. So it's so important to have dialogue, like the Lieutenant Governor was mentioning, that we can agree to disagree, but we have to understand what we don't know, and also recognize that someone may know information and a different perspective than we have, that it behooves us, particularly in this free society, to listen to the other side. You may not agree at the end of the day, but at least listen, actively listening. There's a difference between hearing and listening, and folks don't understand the difference. And listening is truly absorbing what the person is sharing with you and having some sort of process to either acknowledge that the information has some validity and do some research and find out additional information, and or confirm what you know to be true. But you have to do that in an honest, earnest way.
Absolutely.
So true.
And Curtis, go ahead with your question, because I want to go grab my notes real quick and then come right back. So go ahead, Curtis, please.
Yeah, I just want to know, what do you think is going to be the outcome of the IG report, and how are the Democrats going to respond? I know they're going to go in spin mode, but is this something they could really spin themselves out of?
Well, the Democrats are great at spin masters. As you saw today, when the news came out that it was now a criminal investigation, automatically the turn was Bob Barr cannot be trusted. Donald Trump is using this as a political ploy. We already had the Mueller report, so we don't need to get any more information. And then they forget what they said just a few days ago, that they need to get to the facts. They need to get to the truth. They don't want any foreign meddling in our elections, and we have to find out why it started and where the investigation came from and who was involved. All of a sudden, in a few days or weeks later, you don't want to know the truth anymore. You only want to know the truth when it pertains to President Trump and when it fits your narrative. Then you're not doing the U.S. Government, number one, and the people that you represent, number two, a good service, because you're not being a fair and honest leader. And if that's the case, many people that have elected these folks ought to feel very embarrassed that this is the best representative that they can have from their states or their districts, because that's not what a republic should expect to have for their leaders. Those that just want to cherry pick things and claim that some things are good and other things are not, and unfair justice, criminal justice system, unfair application of the law. And regardless of what side of the spectrum you lie, whether you're independent, Republican, Democrat, you should want fairness, because it could be your family member that's the next target. And you would want that person to have the fair justice applied, the fair rules applied, the fair laws applied, and have them have an opportunity to defend themselves as we have under our judicial system. And currently, President Trump does not have that fairness applied to him. So if we don't want it happening to us personally and or our families, why should we want it applied to someone else? So no one really knows how it's going to turn out, but we do know that the Democrats will push back, because many of them may not know the depths to which folks did illegal acts. Many may not know what exactly Andrew McCabe and Peter Strzok, et cetera, did, but they know that they do want to protect their party and they do want to protect their power, so they will go along to get along. But that's a wrong thing to do, because it undermines our full rule of law. It undermines our republic. It undermines everything that we believed our government was doing to be fair to us and to be mindful and respectful of the American people. So I hope that on the Democrat side, there are leaders in the room that will stand up for justice. I mean, when Trayvon Martin had his issue, won justice for all, and Black Lives Matter, and everyone's lives matter in this instance here. If they find that there were never Trumpers that were engaged with the Democrats to take down a duly elected president, then so be it. Those never Trumpers will have to be charged as well if they found to have criminal acts. And Republicans should not be defending those people as the Democrats are defending the Democrats that have been engaged and involved in this act. So we're going to see a lot of back and forth and pushback, and particularly coming into the presidential year in 2020, the Democrats will try to paint this as if it's all political and there's nothing to see here, and all these people are great patriots and they worked for the FBI and they were doing what they thought was just and good. But just and good is not breaking the law. Let you, CB, or myself break the law in the way that these people have done, and we will be incarcerated until we go into the grave. And that's what will happen to most Americans who are just Joe Schmo or Jane Schmo, that you would not have the protective cloak of Hillary Clinton. You're not going to have the protective cloak of a John Brenner and all the others that have been engaged in this cover-up. And so, therefore, if the Democrats claim that they want to get to the truth and know the truth, regardless of where the truth lies, they should want the information to be presented to the American people so that we can have true transparency in our government.
Well, I'm thinking that, and I'm hoping that criminal indictments will, add a dose of reality to what so far has been fantasy.
Well, we had indictments with Paul Manafort, and the Democrats were all in glee about that. But that again was a farce, because we know that they were cherry picking things, and you have indictment Roger Stone and others that when it fits the narrative, so they can put a black eye on President Trump, then it's fine. So when indictments come out, they're going to, the indictments mean nothing. They have to go and do a grand jury, and a grand jury means nothing. And they have to present their evidence, and I'm going to be exonerated at the end of the day. And it's just going to go on and on while they're trying to impeach the president along the way. And I say, even though the president put out the transcript that clearly shared with everyone to see, for those who could read can clearly see that there was no quid pro quo, yet still the Democrats have launched this impeachment inquiry in quiet rooms where no one can see the testimony and read the testimonies and transcripts of people that what they've said, and it's been very one-sided. And I'm glad that the Republicans finally grew a pair to say that we're going to make sure that the American people physically see that we have been blocked out from being part of the process. We have been duly elected by all these people in America, and their voices and their eyes cannot see this information. So now it's going to force shift, and all those that are trying to make this buried and try to cherry pick the information that they receive and pump it out to the press so that they can paint Donald Trump in a bad light. So you see the polls that they're doing, and they're talking to people and asking them questions that have no idea about the secrecy of Schiff's committee. They have no idea about the transcript and what it says. They have no idea that almost everyone that has testified has said there's been no quid pro quo. Even the leader of Ukraine have said that he did not feel threatened with no quid pro quo. But yet still, when they interview, when they do a poll with people are assuming that a crime has been committed where none has been committed or proven to be committed, and then they're responding to that. So that lets you know we have either an electorate or those that have not been participating in political process at all that don't know much of anything. As much as we are engaged with the news and reading and immersed in this political spectrum, the vast majority of people are not. So therefore, it could be spoon-fed and led to believe any smut that comes out from whoever wants to spoil their thought process and make them respond and react in a certain way.
You know, you hit on so many big points in that one. One of the things that you mentioned, the arrest of Roger Stone, they have a way of using the optics. So a person may be 100% innocent, but how they are portrayed and how the camera hits them when it hits them is an important part to their ploy. Make the person look guilty by innuendo or by an optic, such as what they did to Roger Stone. The public will assume that they're guilty. So no matter what happens in the outcome of the trial, that person for the rest of their life will be guilty of, in the eyes of the public.
And, you know, and today, and you hit the nail on the head again, in today's world, public opinion supersedes the rule of law. It supersedes the justice system. It supersedes the truth. And particularly with social media, where you have all these bots out there, and you have, let's look at Mitt Romney creating, a secret Twitter account. So that lets you know how much out there is fake for the what we assume when the press says, oh, all these Twitter people are following this one and the other one, and this is what people are saying on Twitter, when it probably boils down to maybe 9 or 10% of actual people, because it's been fabricated to come across as if so many people are outraged of X, Y, and Z, that it's doing the public a disservice. And we cannot allow this to be our norm, because we will be dumbing down a large portion of our society where other countries can truly come in and influence how we respond, how we behave, and take over while we are so engrossed in nonsense that you can have the Chinese come in, or even the Russians come in, or any other entity come into our country little by little, absorbing the intelligence that we have for the nonsense that people are being immersed in. And meanwhile, we've lost our education, we've lost our civil society, we've lost our rights and constitutional rights, we've lost our economics, we've lost our control of our well-being. And then we wake up and find out, well, what happened? Why did we lose these 2 generations?
We're asleep at the wheel. We always assume that it wasn't going to happen, but they do it inch by inch. As soon as they get the door just to start to crack, they put their little toe there and they just keep on pushing and pushing until they're fully in the room. Meanwhile, as conservatives, we're worried more about our job, our family, what's going on around us. We don't pay attention to what they're doing in the ivory towers, because we're assuming that America will always be the America we know, not what it's becoming.
Well, it will be the America we know or have known if we fight for it. Once we stay complacent and assume it's always going to stay that way, there will always be others that see an opportunity to take advantage of what we have. And with the generation that we have to, actually 2 or 3 generations now, we've become complacent. We assume that we're going to be able to wake up, get in our car, drive to work, go to the store. There'll be things on the shelf that we want, and we'll have our opportunity for our free speech, our Second Amendment, our right to a fair trial, etc. But inch by inch, it's going away because we're seeing as soon as a gun incident occur, immediately the Democrats come out and want to take away our guns and have more gun control. When there's no gun incidents, you don't hear anything about that. But in a gun-free zones is where we have a lot of the crimes occurring and people are unable to defend themselves. When we have the First Amendment issue, it's for some and it's not for conservatives. The Democrats and the liberals and the socialists can say whatever they want, shout down people, and then they get away with it. As soon as a conservative speaks up, they're ostracized or have to lose their job. And inch by inch, it goes away once we stay asleep at the wheel, as you mentioned, and we stay complacent the way we are. But when civics was taken out of the classroom, our public schools, and when our adults didn't teach in the home about appreciation of their country, and when we have taken away God from our schools, and we've taken away the things that will give us the solid foundation on truth, then we have started losing our society. And we're going to start losing our country if we're not willing to defend it.
That's a huge, huge amen. Because unfortunately, a study came out recently, which would actually knock your socks off, that 51% of Americans do not believe we should have complete free speech. They believe the First Amendment, which most people don't even know what's in the First Amendment, is no longer valid for our society. I doubt if anyone out there can, off the top of their head, list the 5 rights that are stated in just the First Amendment. So if this is what the media and other, ivory tower people feel, they're pushing those ideals down onto the people, we the people, and taking away our voice and our rights.
Well, I tell you, and a number of people, and the vast majority of people have not traveled overseas to other lands to see what socialism, communism, the lack of free speech, lack of free movement, lack of free choice looks like. So it sounds good when Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders and all the others on the left and running for president talk about free this, free that, take away this, more restrictions, more do away with the Constitution as a fluid document, and we ought to change it to this time. The reason that this country, being so young, less than 250 years old, have stayed and stood the test of time, even with slavery and all the other ills that we've had, is because of the Constitution that our founding fathers have put into place. They looked in the future and understood how man was, the behavior of man, and said, we're going to put these measures in place to guard against a tyrannical government, to make sure that we have a republic for the people, to make sure that the people have a say and a choice, to make sure that people have inalienable rights that's given to them by God. They placed all these things in the Constitution, recognizing and realizing what they were setting up and how if men being generic, go unchecked without the balance in their government, how it could easily turn on its head and not be an America that they saw. So I commend them for having the vision. Today, we don't have a vision. We're responding to immediacy. What sounds good, what feels good, what people want, what's going to give me the next vote, what's going to give me more money to get reelected, about my position, can I stay in office, I like the perks that I have. And the Congress was not set up for these folks to stay in office for 50, 60, 30, 20 years. It was for them to be a citizen government, to go to Washington, D.C., to represent their people, to come back and be reaffirmed every 2 years, particularly in the House, to communicate with their constituents as to what the constituents wanted, not regardless of party affiliation, about people. Once you're elected, you're representing people. You're not representing just Democrats and Republicans, or you're representing all the people in your district, black, white, indifferent. What are their needs and concerns? And that's what you ought to be taking back to the Congress every session that you go in. Now, most of these people, they're in D.C. more than they are in their district. And when they have town halls in their district, it's just a matter of checking a box. I've done the town hall. And then they go back to Washington, D.C. And that's where the fallacy occurs, because now they're about protecting their own seat, protecting their title, and making sure that they can go through and have a re-election. And anyone that comes to challenge them, they will bring out all the beast in the world and spread a whole bunch of untruths against that person, and making the electorate, again, respond to that negative advertisement, as we're seeing with President Trump right now. And so, therefore, folks have to understand why it's so critical and important for us to make sure that our Constitution stays intact. It gives our justice, our Supreme Court justice, and all the other justices a framework and a benchmark that they should be referring to make sure that the laws that are being passed is not infringing upon our constitutional rights. And if we have activist judges, and that's why it's so important that when we elect people, whether to be a governor or the president, that they're not going to have the mindset, let's undo the Constitution. Let's bring activist judges in so that they can rewrite the laws for us from the bench, because whatever goes to the Supreme Court, that's going to be the law of the land. And no matter what our framers wanted in that Constitution, is going to be undone. And so the voters would not even have a say as to if this is the type of government that they want or not. So once we have taken out civics again from the classroom, and we don't even know it in our own home, we don't even know what our articles are in the Constitution, we don't know our Bill of Rights, it's easy to say it's fine to have a socialist government. But I caution people, if you like socialism so much, go to where socialism is. Norway, you go to I just went to China at the beginning of September, and I was in China some years back, and I was marveled by how many cameras were just all over the place. Everywhere you looked up, I don't care if you were in a building, I don't care if you were outside in the streets, there were cameras all over. And at that point I go, I'm glad the United States is not like this. Then I go back this year, and there are more cameras. And people are in your space listening to your conversation so they can go and tell the government what you're saying. And nothing, even the people in China will tell you they have to do what the government says. They cannot speak against their government. They cannot, they will turn in anyone that speaks against their government. So you don't have the freedoms to move about as you have here. And there's some places you can't even go. We can even have our Twitter account operating in China, nor Facebook. And then once we started doing some communication with our WeChat, that was also monitored by the Chinese government. So, and even the WhatsApp, is monitored by the Chinese government. So your communication is being monitored. You're being looked at everywhere, what you do. And even some of our tour guides were telling us, if you speak out against the government in any way, not only will you be punished, but your family will be punished as well. People have just disappeared.
Exactly.
So is that the type of America we want? People don't want aren't dying to come to this country for the communism that they're leaving behind, for the socialist government they're leaving behind. They're coming for the freedom. So why do we want to change it? And if you like communism and socialism so much, why don't you move to where it currently is and see how much you like it there?
Well, Jennifer, we got our next guest on the line, and I don't know if you want to hang out with us or not, but it's Florida State Representative.
No, I have to go, but I appreciate you having me on very much so, and I appreciate your listening audience as well.
Well, I'm going to redo the description so that people, when they look at it and pull it up in the archives, know that you're here with us on the show. So just tell people where they can find you.
They can go to my website at jennifercarroll.com. That's JenniferCarroll.com.
Well, God bless you, Jennifer, for the hard work you do. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a blessed day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's bring aboard. It's always fun to have him here on board. Mike Hill, Florida Congressman. Good afternoon, Mike. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, Annie. I'm doing well. Hello, Curtis.
Hey, how's it going?
Great.
I had let me just pull my papers up because that threw me off having Jennifer come in when she did. This is going to be changed. Okay, here we go. You have legislation, and thank you for this, because this is something we were discussing quite a lot lately. Your bill, HB 6003, in reference to the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act, which was SB 7026 and HB 60015. Tell us about your counter bill.
Yes, and thank you, Annie, for that opportunity. First, let me ask, can you hear me okay, or does it sound like an echo?
It sounds like you're in an echo chamber, but it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, as you know, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas bill that was signed into law shortly after the shooting was rushed through the legislative process way too quickly. It never went to committees where it could be properly vetted and debated. It was simply brought to the floor. It was stoked by emotional mob rule. There were thousands of people who came to the Capitol, and what happened was they passed legislation which had some good parts in it and some parts that were unconstitutional, which I believe made it some bad parts. The good parts of the bill was it allowed funding to make the schools safer. It was also providing funding for mental health counselors and also funding for additional resource officers. These are policemen who are on campus to help protect the students and their schools. Now, those events right there are tangible and can really help perhaps prevent the next tragedy from happening. But then they went too far. They also added provisions of the bill which are all unconstitutional. Number one, they said that an 18 to 20-year-old could not purchase a weapon in Florida. Amazing, utterly amazing. Then they said the red flag laws, which are essentially gun confiscation laws, where someone can accuse you of not acting mentally rationally, and without any due process, you can have your weapons taken away from you. And there is a process to try and get it back, but it requires you to go through the legal system, and you do not get reimbursed for your attorney fees that you have to do. There's a third component which says there is a 3-day waiting period after you purchase a weapon. And then finally, they said that a bump stock could not be bought or sold in Florida. Typically, what a bump stock does is it allows your weapon to fire faster. However, their definition in the law was so broad that any modification that you would make to your weapon could be considered a bump stock, even if you're changing the trigger on your handgun. So I filed legislation to repeal all 4 of those measures, which were clearly unconstitutional.
Man, I have it before me, broken down, and I want to thank Glenda White, who I guess sent this to me, and I highlighted. You have so much good stuff in here, and I wanted to go back to the red flag law, and a perfect example, and I spoke about this at the last show, that up in Tisbury, Massachusetts, an 84-year-old man who was a decorated Korean War veteran. He served as a police officer, and at the age of 84, he was still serving his community as a school crossing guard. Now, turns out the school resource officer just never seemed to be around when the kids were coming to school or leaving. Always found some reason to be somewhere else and not looking out for the kids. And he made a comment at a lunch counter that he goes into every day to eat. The people there know him. And he made a comment about this school crossing officer who never seems to be there to help protect the kids, and how it would be a perfect opportunity if someone wanted to do something and shoot up the school. The waitress at the counter overheard him saying this, goes to the police chief, files a complaint because he was talking about the opportunity to take kids out. No, he was talking about how to defend the kids, exact opposite. And that 84-year-old man had his guns yanked under the red flag law in Massachusetts. This is what that red flag law does. And yet no one came up to him and said, wait a minute, explain yourself. There was no warrant out for him or anything like that. Just yanked the guns without any warning. That's what the red flag laws do.
Exactly, Annie. And since that bill was signed into law in 2018, in Florida, over 2,654 guns have been confiscated from law-abiding Floridians, law-abiding up to the point where they haven't been found guilty or charged with any crime. So that's at a pace of almost 5 a day. And we find that there are certain counties who do it much more prevalently than others. Up in the Panhandle, where I am, the Pensacola, Fort Walton Beach, Destin area is negligible. But when you start getting down south where the state tends to be turning more liberal, more blue, it is much more prevalent that it is happening. And you just described a very egregious example of it. There's even one that's just as bad, if not worse, here in Florida. There was a young high school student who made some comments on social media about what he would like to do to hurt others. Well, when they saw that, they came to his home and they took the father's handgun without any due process. The son didn't even own one, but they took the father's. Now, what is so dangerous about that, Annie, is the only way they knew that the father had the handgun in the first place was because you have to register every weapon that you purchase in Florida. And many years ago, the NRA spoke loudly against that, saying that, don't you see what this is? This is a first step towards gun confiscation if they know that you own a weapon, because you have to register it. And that is exactly what is happening in Florida now.
There's example after example of these red flag laws. And California was one of the first ones to institute it. And the perfect example was a woman was depressed. So the doctor put her on Paxil. Because he put her on Paxil, I guess in California they have to register when you have one of these depressive drugs given to a patient. They went and took the husband's guns that he had kept locked in a safe, but they still confiscated his guns because the doctor put her on Paxil for her depression. She wasn't violent. She wasn't threatening. She wasn't suicidal. She was just depressed. And occasionally people get low. They get down and low. But because that Paxil was prescribed, his guns were taken. You have recently a guy posted up on Twitter, a Joker mime. They were advertising, I guess, or whatever, talking about the movie, this new movie out, Joker. So the guy turned around and posted a mime of himself holding 2 AK-47s with the caption, "One ticket for Joker, please." His guns were taken for what he posted on Twitter.
And I'll tell you, Annie, what makes it so dangerous, you mentioned a young lady in California who was prescribed medication. There are many parts in Florida and other parts of our state where there are large military populations. And a veteran group came to me and says, Mike, this is what is so dangerous about these gun confiscation laws, or called red flag laws. He says, we have young men and women who are returning from combat situations who have been diagnosed with some form of PTSD. Some are mild, some are more severe. But they are reluctant to go get help because they are afraid that their guns are going to be confiscated and they won't be able to buy one in the future. Now, that's a dangerous situation where here's someone who needs help, but they won't go get it because they don't want to be prescribed medication and then red flagged. So these red flag laws are so horrendous, they're so unconstitutional, that they violate many portions of our Constitution. There's a First Amendment, freedom of speech. So in other words, if you say the wrong thing, they can take it. Of course, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. Then there's a Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure. Then there's the 14th Amendment, the right to privacy. All of these are being violated, and for some reason, it is continuing. Florida was the first state, Florida was the first conservative red state where red flag laws are implemented. I believe right now it's in 15 different states throughout the nation, and all of them are egregious and need to go. So I filed the bill in Florida, House Bill 6003, to repeal those unconstitutional gun-grabbing parts of that law.
Yeah, it is. From what Glenda White sent me, it sounds absolutely great. You know, and I'm telling people, if you're in Florida, support Mike Hill on this, on HB 6003. I don't even know where to keep on going because civil procedure is treated like criminal law under red flag laws. You know, you have zero rights. You should have rights whether you're in civil court or criminal court, but civil court just seems to be trampling you.
I'll give you another example, Annie, and this is a personal one for me because I am intimately aware and familiar with it. I had a young man who was working for me in my office. I have a small business, an insurance agency, and he was working here. And for some reason, he was just having trouble with our software system on our computer. And unbeknownst to me, he went to go see a doctor. And he told me about this later, but he went to go see the doctor, and he told the doctor that, hey, I seem to be having some problem just focusing, and being able to get this software system. Is there something perhaps you can give me which would help me with my focus? And the doctor said, well, let me ask you some questions, and started going down a list of questions. One of the questions was, have you ever thought about hurting yourself? Well, this young man answered yes. And the doctor went on to the next question, have you thought of using a weapon to hurt yourself? And he said, I hesitated for a minute and thought, well, if I thought of hurting myself, and he said, yes, I did. They Baker acted him. That means he had to go to a psychiatric facility for a minimum of 72 hours.
Whoa.
So he goes to this facility simply because he said, I thought about hurting myself. So they take him to this facility. When he gets there, they said, are you concealed carry? And he said, yes. So they confiscated his weapon. And once he got to the facility, a doctor examined him and said, no, he's fine. He shouldn't even be here. Well, they kept him there for the 72 hours anyway. Then upon his release, he goes to the police department and asks for his weapon back. They told him no, because of the law that was signed into place after Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. That law was signed in, allowing them to do what are called risk protection orders or red flag laws. They confiscated his weapon. This happened December of last year. To this date, he has not received his weapon back. And in preparation for being on this show, I contacted him and asked him what his status was. He said that he was told by the police that he would have to get a lawyer to try and get his weapon back. And under Florida's new law, there is no reimbursement for your costs for this lawyer. So this young man says, I don't have money for a lawyer. I just want my weapon back. They will not give it back to me. That is just a trampling on our Constitution that should not be allowed, not only in Florida, but any state in these United States.
Maybe you should contact Gun Owners of America, because I think they do have some sort of a legal service to help someone in that type of a situation. They're even more conservative than the NRA. With Gun Owners, GAO.com, I believe, is their website. Father and son run it together, and it's a fantastic site. But one of the things I did want to mention, I'm glad you said it, about how they're able to get away with this so easily is because an average person like you or me or this young man don't have the funds to access an attorney. So they know that we have no legal repercussion that we could afford to pursue. So they either bankrupt you, or you just throw your hands up in the air, walk away, and go, I'm just going to have to live my life a little differently because the government has decided that I can't do this any longer.
What they have done, Annie, is they will make you vulnerable to criminals. You do not have any ability with a weapon anyway to defend and protect yourself. You are solely at the mercy of government, that you have to wait for them to show up, if they do in time, to stop you from being robbed, from being assaulted or anything. You are now defenseless to protect yourself from a criminal who will have a weapon and does not even have it legally in most cases, but you are now defenseless. And I don't understand a mentality in the United States that would allow something like that to happen, particularly when we can see historically what that has meant in other countries who will confiscate the weapons of its citizens. It always leads to tyranny and then to mass murder of the civilian population. We see it time and time again. And for someone to think that it can't happen in the United States, you're fooling yourself.
You know, years and years ago, when I was a city cop, New York City cop, what they did to us was that if the weapon wasn't on your person, you had to have it locked up. So you either had a trigger lock that you had to put on it or a safe. At that time, I said, this is the first step to then turning around and saying, no, we're going to be able to take your guns from you because we don't feel like you're safe with guns. You know how long it takes if you are being attacked or your house is, a robber is coming right through that front door and you're about to be assaulted, to go run to your safe, key in the combination, pull out your weapon, load it, and then defend yourself? Bye. The only way you're leaving that house is feet first. I mean, you're going out on a slab. You're not going to have time to do that. The same thing with these stupid trigger guards, they said. Then you have to find the key that fits the trigger guard, unlock it, then load the weapon, then defend yourself. You're dead. But now with these red flag laws, face it, Flounder, your life is forfeit.
What they're saying is that your life is not that important, that this law is more important over your life. And the situation you described, and you're absolutely right. If an intruder is coming into your home to do harm to you or your family or to steal something from you, you can't look at that person and say, hold it right there. Just don't move. Let me go get my weapon. That's not how it works.
Oh, sorry. I'm up. I also have the video up on YouTube. Not YouTube, Facebook. So someone just typed in something about Gun Owners of America, which she agrees it happens to be a really good group. And yeah, our life is forfeit. If you simply look at the Obamacare law that went into effect, we are called not individuals, not patients, not citizens. We are called units. And this is how government looks at us. We are a number, we are a unit, we are a statistic, and we are disposable.
Annie, I would like to just, with the little bit of time we have left, is if I may explain to your audience why I filed that legislation to repeal it. And the reason why I did was to be elected in office. Not only do you have to receive more votes than the other candidate who's running, you also must say an oath. That is part of you being able to fulfill your position, to be able to obtain your position. And my oath, which is in Florida, which is similar to a lot of other states, says that I do solemnly swear to protect and defend the Constitution and the Florida Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I am duly qualified to hold this position and will faithfully do the duties of the office of which I am about to enter. So help me God. Now, what I would hope I can get my fellow legislators, not only in Florida, but wherever you are, is to understand how solemn that oath is. First of all, when you take that oath, it's not between you and the judge administering the oath. And it is much more even between you and your constituents. When you are taking that oath, it is between me and the living God. It is an act of worship for me. I am promising God that I will protect and defend that Constitution. And that's why we seal it with, so help me God. So if I promise God I'm going to protect and defend our Constitution, when it comes under attack with these red flag laws and these other provisions which trample on our Constitution, I am duty bound by my oath to office, to my oath to God, that I must file legislation to repeal it. Otherwise, I'm not showing any fidelity to my oath. I'm not being true to my oath to the living God that I am going to protect and defend this Constitution. That's why I filed the legislation.
God bless you. I wish we had more elected officials out there like you. I know I've got a state senator who's very similar to you. You know, he had a forum meeting just the other day here in our town to get input from his constituents. And I looked at the crowd that was there, and it was a mix of people. And a lot of them I knew were not Republicans. They were absolutely Democrats. But he was listening to everyone's point of view. He was following his oath of office to his constituents. And this is what we need. When we say all politics are local, it starts here at the grassroots. It starts here at home, because a lot of these guys we vote in proceed on to the next office up, the next office up. The next thing you know, they are your senator in Congress, and possibly even the President of the United States. So we got to find more people like you, more people like Jennifer Carroll, more people like my state senator Tom Davis here, and Chip Campson. And we got to get our voices heard through you.
Annie, you are so right, and thank you for bringing that up. We have to start at the local level, and I'm talking about at the school boards, at the county commission, at the city council, and then we're talking a state level and the congressional level. But you must make sure you are getting the right people in office, that you're voting for the right people, because if you have the wrong person there, no matter what our Constitution says, they will ignore it and trample all over it, as we have so blatantly seen. So my oath to office was that I would be true to my Constitution. So now, what are your listeners going to do? They must make it a point to make sure you find candidates and you vote for candidates who, one, understand their oath. Number two, have a good moral background and fiber. Because if they don't, they'll lie to you in a minute. And they might say that they're true to their oath, but if it doesn't mean anything to them, then they won't. So find someone who understands the Constitution, understands their oath of office, is of good moral fiber, I would say who has Christian beliefs, and make sure you put those people in office, because that is how you can rest more assured that you have a government that's going to represent you and not themselves for their next political position.
And that is extremely important. Now, Curtis, I hear your hesitation. You got a question here?
Oh, yeah. I just want to know if it's true that, from what I've been hearing, that the left is trying to implement some kind of mental health day for students, and the purpose, overtly is, to give them a day off when they're stressed out or whatever reason they come up with. It won't be accounted for them. But beneath the surface, I hear this is just another attempt by the left to confiscate guns. In other words, when these kids get of age where they can qualify to buy firearms, it'll be said that, hey, we checked, did a background check, and we saw that you had a couple of mental health days, so you don't qualify for a gun. So right there, they would get probably more than half of the population then, without guns.
Curtis, you raise an alarming issue, because particularly as teenagers, we all remember Those are stressful times because of the intense peer pressure that you're under. And if you were to give in to that peer pressure and say, hey, I'm having a real bad day, I think I'm just going to take a mental health day and go home, if that were available to you, how many of us would have done that? When instead what we should be focusing on is life is not easy, and you're going to come under pressure. And you need to learn how to deal with that pressure now and stand up to it and still perform instead of saying, I need a day off, I'm going home. That is, no. And so not only is it dangerous in terms of flagging you for something in the future, it also does not allow you to grow and strengthen as a person. If that comes before me in the Florida legislature, you can rest assured that I will strongly debate against it, encourage others to vote no for it.
Well, that's a huge point, because we've got these safe zones out there. And how dare you wear the American flag because you're triggering me? Instead of turning around and saying, this is how life is, you're going to see things that may not agree with what you think or feel about how things should be. But again, where we spoke with Jennifer earlier and with former Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer, that we need to have that civil conversation, an exchange of ideas, instead of saying, no, I need my safe zone. Don't wear a MAGA hat. Don't wave the American flag because you're going to trigger me.
Unbelievable.
So how do we toughen our kids up? Basically, you got to turn around and tell them, get over yourself.
That's right. We need to stop coddling these young people like they're still pre-K, that they're still 3 and 4 years old. No, life is going to have its ups and downs. You need to deal with it. And that starts at home, Annie. We must have these homes with a mother and father present. Children need both the mother and father for their competent development and to be able to function in this society. And we have too many, particularly in the minority community, in the black community, where fathers are not present. We need to start having fathers stand up, be men, and raise your families properly. If you're going to have that child, you need to take the responsibility of raising that child, being at home, working so that you can earn the money to support your family. That's what we have to focus on, is that family structure coming back together. That will serve so many ills that are in our society. And as you know, Annie and Curtis, before the 1960s, the childbirth out of wedlock for the black family was down in the low teens. Now here it is like in the low 70% of most black children who are born are out of wedlock. That is unconscionable and has to be turned around.
Well, Mike, I do believe that we got our next guest in on the line. If we can bring her on, you want to hang out or do you have to run?
No, I do have to run, but thank you so much for having me on, Annie. It's always a pleasure sharing with you, Curtis, and your listeners. Thank you so much.
And people can find you on your website, which is votemikehill.com, and contribute to your campaign to keep you in office, because Florida needs you badly.
Oh, that would be greatly appreciated. Any amount, yes, votemikehill.com.
And God bless, Mike. Take care. All right.
Amen. Thank you.
Mike Hill, check him out at votemikehill.com. And I do believe we have Lucretia Hughes with us. Good afternoon, Lucretia. Is this Lucretia?
No, this is Mary Bodden.
Ah, all right. I got myself backwards. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I was just calling to check on the correct time to call you in. Usually I speak with someone before I'm put on the air, so I apologize if that's happened. I'm going to be calling in a half an hour at 5 o'clock.
Well, all right, that'd be fine. Yeah, because that's what I was telling your agent at 5 p.m. So I'll be talking to you in a short while then. Thank you. Normally my co-host picks up on the switchboard, but he's asleep at the wheel right now. So I apologize.
Actually,
well, I apologize if I interrupted something.
Oh, no. This is live radio, so you never know what happens. It's always fun. So we'll be speaking with you in half an hour. That's perfect.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right. Actually, I was about to try to find out where our next guest was when I saw, the line opened up. So I said, well, that must be her. But I will right now contact her and make sure she has the call-in number. Just
all right.
In case
well, that will give me a few minutes to do the dedication because we weren't able to do it at the start of the show. So I will touch you in a few. Curtis.
Okay.
All right. And those that listen to the show know that we start off each and every show with a dedication to a fallen hero. And today's dedication is going out to Canine Officer Jordan Harris Sheldon. He was shot and killed while conducting a traffic stop on West Plaza Drive at 10 p.m. on Saturday, May 4th of this year, out of the Mooresville Police Department, North Carolina. And this reads from Fox News. Canine Officer Jordan Sheldon was shot and killed while conducting a traffic stop on May 4, 2019. Officer Sheldon served for 6 years in the Mooresville Police Department in North Carolina. He was survived by his parents, brother, sister, and fiancé. Harry Sheldon says he was sitting outside in Charleston, South Carolina one day, enjoying a cup of coffee with his family, when he heard the commotion. His 15-year-old son, Jordan, sprang into action. A young man near the South Carolina city's historic Mills House Hotel was pounding on his girlfriend, and she was yelling, "Help!" Sheldon remembers, within moments, Jordan hit him in the jaw and knocked him back down, pressing his knee to the attacker's throat and warning him to stay put until police arrived. Sheldon told Fox News that memories like these about Jordan shows how, since he was a little boy, he was first to respond. Now, 17 years later, Sheldon is mourning the loss of his son, who went on to become a North Carolina police officer. He was gunned down on May 4 in the line of duty while trying to make what authorities called a routine traffic stop just outside of Charlotte. Jordan Sheldon formed close bonds with the dogs of the Mooresville Police Department Canine Unit. He served with the Mooresville Police Department for 6 years, was part of its tight-knit canine unit. Authorities have disclosed few details about his death, beyond saying his suspected killer was later found dead in an apartment from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Harry described his 32-year-old son's killing as senseless and evil. Officer Sheldon's police cruiser was decorated after his death. As a young boy growing up in the area, Jordan enjoyed playing soccer, baseball, and football. Harry says he came from a long line of proud Americans and had family members who had served in World War II and the Korean War. Officer Andrew Beck, who served alongside Sheldon at the Mooresville Police Department, described him during his memorial service. In mid-May, as a man who had a glowing heart and the soul of a warrior, and one who was scared of nothing. We learned together. We went through troubled times together, dangerous times together, Beck said. There was no better cop than Sheldon. I promise you that. Every day we came in for training, it may have been 97 degrees out, and he pushed us. Sheldon is survived by his mother, father, stepfather, stepmother, sister, brother, and fiancé, among other close relatives. Today's show is dedicated to Canine Officer Jordan Harris Sheldon. It is also dedicated to all the brave men and women out there that serve as first responders, be they law enforcement, firefighters, or emergency services. It's also dedicated to the brave men and women that serve in our military, from the birth of this nation through today and into its future. And we dedicate to them this song, Amazing Grace. May God bless each and every one.
the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. And when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's grace than when we first begun. We've no less days to sing God's grace than when we'd first begun.
And we're back. You're here listening to Southern Sense here live on Blog Talk Radio, SHR Media, the Lone Star Daily News, up on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, YouTube, Facebook, all the heck with it. Just go to the name of the show, put a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com. Welcome aboard and back, Curtis. We do have our next victim on the line. She also has her own lovely podcast, which you can find on her Facebook page as well as in her website, fallbackproductionstudios.com. Welcome aboard, Lucretia Hughes. How is that for an intro?
That was a great intro. I actually got something y'all can talk about now. Hey, everybody.
Man, there is so much to talk about. I don't know if you caught any of the funeral of Congressman Clyburn today, but I caught a bit of it with Hillary Clinton doing her eulogy. Yeah. And it took me all about 2 seconds in between reaching for the barf bag, looking at her going, she's going to throw her hat in the race. What do you say? I think she is.
You know what? She's going to try. She's been saying for the last couple of weeks now that she could beat Trump again. Well, no, sweetheart, you like the last place loser. And after all these years, you still complaining? No wonder Bill don't want you. Did I say that? Yes, I did. And I couldn't watch that. I can't watch that type of stuff. So what I did is just took the transcripts, and she took a swipe at our president and the first lady. And then she wanted to say that Elijah Cummings was honest person. I'm sorry, he's going to burn in hell, ma'am. Quit playing. You might as well go ahead and get your cot ready because you're going to be right beside him.
I'm sorry. I made a mistake because Clyburn is a representative from my state. It's Cummings from Baltimore, Maryland area. And I couldn't watch it, honestly. It was just killing me. So no. I'm going to be one of those who's going to have to download the transcript later on with the barf bag in hand. But, you know what? All
you got to do if you wanted to look at his funeral is just look at a Democratic debate. It's the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You had the whole deep state in one room. Again, you had all the traitors of our nation in one room clapping each other on the back with the fake smiles and the fake grins, knowing that, you know what, y'all have really corrupted the United States and y'all have used it to your own bequest, and it's time for somebody to call them out on it. And I thank God that Bill Barr is doing it, and they are running scared right now, especially since it's turned into a criminal investigation.
I had this, of course, now I got paper spread all over the place, but it looks like it is going to come to head. Jim Holt and Gateway Pundit put it all together because between what Barr is doing, what is coming out with the Horowitz investigation on the deep state, what has come out with the FISA warrants being fruit of the poisonous tree, that it was corrupt information, it was false information in order to obtain those FISA warrants, and it's possible that Flynn will have his conviction tossed out the window. And then, of course, now we've got another country thrown into the Biden and Hunter Biden mess. Creepy Uncle Joe and his son.
Romania.
Thank you. Yes.
Romania.
And what really gets
I know too much about politics.
What people don't realize is that the person that partnered with Hunter Biden to put the deal together in Romania is nonetheless Rudy Giuliani, who is doing the investigation in Ukraine on Hunter Biden. So how can you investigate him and still be a partner with him in a dirty deal in Romania? It's making your head
I
just
think
spin.
that it's payback. I think it's payback. I really think it's payback, everything that is going on, and I'm not going to complain because I'm ready to see some people being indicted for the stuff they have done for decades now. And it's just not Joe Biden's son. It's Joe Biden. It's Nancy Pelosi family is involved now. You got Susan Rice. You have Obama. There's also Hillary Clinton and her family. You got John Kerry and his family. This goes deeper. This is the true meaning of what it means to be the deep state and the family and what they have been doing. And when I found out the stuff that Bush Jr. had did against us, how in the world was that not illegal too?
Or Jeb Bush.
And why he opening up his mouth now when he wouldn't even take on Obama? He gonna try to take on Trump. He might want to go back to retirement and start painting again.
Yeah, but people don't realize how dirty Jeb Bush himself was, tied into the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Arkansas governor's mansion, and going down south across the border to find distribution for narcotics. So, Jeb Bush is just as dirty as everyone else. So, yeah, it's like Jim Holden.
And they want a dynasty in America. We're not a dynasty in America. We're a constitutional republic. And that's why they want to keep saying that, we want to repeal and replace the Constitution of the United States. That's the only thing. The Constitution is the only thing that has not allowed them to take us over. And that's the only reason why they want to get rid of it.
Yeah, and that's the sad part, because there was on the website for the Campaign for Free Speech, they did a poll, their own poll, and these are people that work and support free speech, and it's frightening to think that 51% of Americans think the First Amendment is outdated and should be rewritten. 48% believe
half of them don't even know what it is,
or the 5 rights that are described in the First Amendment. They can probably say just one, free speech, and they can't go beyond that. 48% believe hate speech should be illegal. Hate speech should be illegal, and you've got now a major league umpire who's in the hot seat because he put out a tweet and it said, "I'll be buying an AR-15 tomorrow because if you impeach my president this way, you will have another civil war." And then he does hashtag MAGA 2020. And that will be deemed hate speech.
Everything that comes out of the right's mouth, a conservative, Trumper, it doesn't matter. Everything is hate speech, but it's the same thing that is coming out of their mouth. It's the same thing that when you had Maxine Waters get up there and say, harass them, attack them, surround them, go to their houses, disrupt them. And it's just like Sid of the Ice Age, Eric Holder, saying when they go low, we kick them. Well, guess what? It's time to kick back, and I got my steel-toed boots on.
We call them roach stompers. That's what we call them.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, yeah. Get them good in the corner.
Oh, man. But you've got an amazing...
And our roach stomper right now is Bill Barr and Donald Trump. And I say it every day on my show. It takes one tweet, and we riding out.
Yeah, and absolutely.
That's it, Mr. President. Give us one tweet, and we will flood Washington, D.C.
Well, right now he's in my state at a something up in Columbia for prison reform, and just about the entire field.
I got invited to that, but it was just too far.
Well, it's just I looked at the list of attending guest speakers, and it's the entire Democratic plate for the presidency. And so Trump is in the middle of this crowd, and I swear heads, I can hear them here in Beaufort exploding from all the way up there. I swear.
Well, good. He needs to represent. And I don't understand this new bill that they're trying to pass, which is stopping the presidents of the United States from holding any kind of conversation with a foreign power. That right there is crazy.
We would have had no end to World War II unless our president had the power at that time. And it is his power in the Constitution to be able to handle foreign matters. If FDR did not sit down in Yalta with those other three world leaders, we may still be fighting World War II, or we may be under Nazi regime at this point in time. We have to have our president to be able to act according to the Constitution. And it is as if the Constitution doesn't even have any validity anymore to these people.
It doesn't, because they have trampled all over them.
Absolutely. No,
they have trampled it. What was it? A year and a half ago, you had Booker. You had pretty much every, because it was 24 people that was vying to be the Democratic candidate for president. So you had half of them come out and say that the Constitution needs to be repealed and replaced and rewritten. And I'm sorry, I don't think so.
Absolutely. Now, we have Vorp that's posting in the chat room. It is a crime in New York City, and I think they're trying to make it all of New York State, that you cannot say the term illegal alien. This is how crazy it has become. And he also mentions the Republicans.
He didn't tell you the whole thing. You will get charged $250,000 if you call someone an illegal alien. So you can't call a coon anymore. And I'm talking about a raccoon. But you can't even use words like that. But look what we just went through when they trying to force, not only, they got the murder bill in New York. I wouldn't be shocked at anything they try to pull anymore when it comes to the detriment of the Americans, because it ain't for us. It is against us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we had a beauty queen that lost her title. She happened to have been Asian American, and she's a Trump supporter, but because she had tweeted out the fact that she supports Trump, they stripped her of her title, and the next thing you know, she's got these flyers all around the place they're putting up saying that she's a white supremacist. Hello, she's Asian. How does that make her a white supremacist?
Hey, I'm a white supremacist too. What are you talking about?
Oh, that's why I love you. I love you so much.
The way I look at it is this. In the past, the left has always run to the courts to get their social justice, as they call it. And I think we should start using the court system to get a little justice, especially when it comes to things we could defend constitutionally, say like, freedom of speech. If anyone should try to tell me that I can't use certain terms, I'm going to try my best to sue them for everything they're worth. And that's my right to do so. But I think
you know what?
Step up and do that.
We need to do that, and I'm kind of switching it, because this is, to me, is what happened in Texas. Thank goodness that the judge overruled the jury when it came to trying to turn a little boy into a little girl. That right there was precedent, because if that was allowed to stand, to where that little 7-year-old boy would have been able to, his mom would have been able to chemically castrate him, they would have really came gun-ho, not only against the family unit, because they already did that, but for our children too. And they already doing that in schools.
Well, not only that, they have in the public libraries all across the nation these drag queen hours. And this is crazy, because now you're finding parents, these kids come home from these drag queen hours, totally confused. Now they have to go to see a shrink to get their heads straight back on, because it seems like it's perfectly fine to have these drag queens out there who, vast majority, perform in erotic clubs, handling our kids and trying to brainwash them. And these parents are letting them do it.
Because they don't want to raise their own children, especially not with morals and values. But we just seen talking about New York. Look at the little, drag queen little boy. He's 11 years old now. He was twerking in a strip club. wouldn't that be CPS to step in? And then they did step in. They said they didn't find anything wrong with exactly what they was doing. They was exploiting that little boy.
And they had.
And I don't care if you want to be gay. I don't care if you want to dress it in tutus. But you choose to do that when you're 18 years old, when your brain has actually developed enough so you can know what type of decisions that you're making.
Well, unfortunately,
but you know, Child Protective Services is like the police sometimes. You know, they have to take their orders from the top. You know, whatever's political at that time. You know, so that's why I could see why CPS didn't get involved.
They get involved if you decide to whip your child.
Oh, heaven forbid! Heaven forbid!
That's true. That's not political, though.
Then the parent would be put
But
behind
not
bars.
political.
Then the parent would be put behind bars. Now, I pulled out an article specifically for you, and now I just... Oh, good Lord. Annie is so discombobulated today. But there is in California, Seattle, has in the curriculum now that math is racist. They want to reteach math, that it's because of the history of where it comes from. Math is just not about numbers anymore. It's racist, so we have to retreat you. And as we teach you math, we have to re-socially engineer you doing it.
Yep. We're just going to have some dumb kids. What? That's not going to be able to compete on a worldwide scale, since that's where our government wants us anyway in the global society. Then guess what? Our lackeys of kids are not going to be smart enough to hold their own. Not only is math is racist, food is racist now, and time is racist.
Time.
Well, not only that, AOC said that the weather, you know, these storms are racist because they hit only the poor populations. So that's
Can we throw punch her? Just throw punch her back into reality, because I don't know who's whispering in her ear and say, yeah, girl, say that on TV. Say cow for it. Just plucking up cow booty holes. Say it, girl, it'll be real good. You'll get a lot of votes. Really? Who's pumping her head?
Oh, man. Jesus, it's crazy. It is crazy. No, I finally found the article. Washington State Superintendent website has the curriculum up there. Some of the themes in the curriculum: origins and identity and agency, power and oppression, history of resistance and liberation, and finally, reflection and actions. Origins, identity, and agency is defined by ethnic studies, is the way that in which we view ourselves as mathematicians and members of the broader mathematical communities. I'm hearing a lot of doublespeak here. It's going to include a hefty dose of post-colonial studies. Now, what the F is post-colonial studies? By the way, guys...
I hope it's the Jim Crow laws and exactly what the Democratic Party has placed, if they want to talk about racism, the black community in. Not even only black communities, because this word lynching that they went all cahoots on the other day, there was more white people lynched during the Civil Rights era and during that time, during Jim Crow, than anything else. But I digress, because these people are weird.
Oh, heaven forbid. And what's happening is they went after Trump for that word lynching, and they pulled up all the past times Democrats had used the term lynching in reference to an impeachment of Bill Clinton. Hello, you all use the same thing. So why is it okay to use it back then and today it's not correct? When back then it was the House majority that voted to investigate Bill Clinton before they investigated him. This is the only time in our history where it's done backwards. They are investigating him before the House even has a chance to vote on it. No, by the way, the House is not going to get a chance to vote on it because Nancy Pelosi says there's nothing in the Constitution that says that we have to do this. What?
Sure, they already voted. They've already voted 3 times to impeach the president of the United States, and each time it failed. The reason why they hot stepping now is because Bill Barr and what's coming out about Brennan and also Clapper. They are running for the hills trying to get away from them. They are going to be jumping ship soon because all of them going down. At least they're turning this into a criminal investigation because I want to know exactly where this started from and how in the world do you think it's legal to wiretap a private citizen of the United States?
You know,
they going down.
So much.
And a presidential candidate.
So much is going on. It's going to make heads spin. But you have a great podcast, which I love watching at it when I do get a chance. Can't always do it every single night. But I'm telling people that they got to follow you up on Facebook. And I've got a link on the show page that will take them to your website, which is Fallback Production Studios. But I'm telling you that there's so much going on, so much to watch for, and you keep on top of everything, Lucretia. So I'm telling everyone, follow Lucretia Hughes on Facebook and follow her podcast because you're hot, girl. You are sizzling hot.
I will be going live in 5 minutes, and those are some of the topics that we're talking about now is actually on my list to talk about today.
Well, good luck and God bless, Lucretia. Thank you for being with us.
Absolutely. When y'all gonna have me back on?
Anytime. You got my card and number. All right.
Yes, I really want to come. I want to come back on because I have fun and I could be myself and just be myself. You can't do that around a lot of people. You just can't.
All right.
Nah.
Well, we'll be talking soon. Okay. We'll work you in.
Absolutely. And like you said, they can tune in about 4 minutes. We'll be on and ready. It's Fallback Friday. So let's have fun and let's clown on these people. Because I am.
All
right. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
All right, Lucretia Hughes. Check her out, fallbackproductionstudios.com. And then we have now, let's welcome back onto the show, Mary Borden. She has the website called soul2soulchoreography.org. Good afternoon, Mary. How are you doing today?
How are you?
All right. We're just having fun today. Just having so much fun. You never know what's going to happen. Like
I was
said,
listening, and it sounded like you're having a great time. It's always good to enjoy conversation and to laugh and feel connected. So I enjoyed listening.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, you do some fantastic work for kids, and, you were mentioning the way that, we're having our kids brainwashed today, but this is something that you actively saw something going on, and you decided to start an organization to help these kids. Tell us about it.
I'd be happy to. I'm a dance educator. I have a degree in dance. I have a master's, and I just love movement, love dance. I'm a poster child for really good outcomes educationally as I took dance in my childhood. But as most people have observed in our culture, there's been a change. And that change has involved hypersexualization of children. It's happened not only in dance, but all through the culture, through the media exposure and the Internet. And I saw a dance concert about 15 years ago on a college campus. I was invited to come, and I just came, and I was so excited, and I love dance concerts. And what I noticed was a lot of catcalls and hypersexualized dance and hooting and hollering. And I'll tell you what, as a dance educator, my heart sank. I had never seen anything like that. But I came to the conclusion, these are young people that are over 18. I guess they can make their own choices. I don't like them to objectify themselves, but that's their choice. Until I saw that in the high school June dance recital presentations, in the junior high June presentations in dance studios. Then I thought, and this is hypersexualized dance with adult costumes, choreography, and music, in the elementary age range of dance studio, June dance recitals. And then I began to see it in the preschool group. And so it just shifted and kept going further and further down the scale into younger and younger children. And I was so disturbed, I began to speak out about it. There's healthy dance. It's educationally based. That's wonderful. But there's harmful dance, which is hypersexualized and hurtful. And the research on both sides of those issues are very clear. If you're in an age-appropriate dance studio that's healthy and has dance educators, you're going to get a wonderful integration of mind, body, and spirit. You're going to get all kinds of positive outcomes from creativity, problem-solving, risk-taking, high-order thinking, communication, social awareness, emotional maturity, improved self-esteem on the one hand. But on the other hand, if you're in a hypersexualized dance studio, the outcomes are really disturbing. And if you want me to, I can tell you a little bit about what the APA says about that.
Oh, please do.
Well, the APA is the American Psychological Association, and they defined, so I am research-based. I just don't go, this is how I feel. I go to research, and that's what seems to change how people reflect on this issue. It's just not my personal opinion. It's what the research is saying, and so that has garnered me a lot of support for this issue because a lot of people agree with me, but they didn't know how to articulate it. So the APA defines a child who's been hypersexualized as somebody only valued for their sexual appeal or behavior, a child whose physical attractiveness is equated with being sexy, for a child that's treated like a sexual object, or if sexuality is inappropriately imposed on that child. So that's just common sense to me. But I think we need the research and the data, which we were supplied by the APA for, and we can really articulate when a child is hypersexualized, and then the outcomes go from codependence, eating disorders, high risk of porn use, poor academics, promiscuity, objectification, promoting a rape culture, teen pregnancy, inability to identify that they've even been abused, and, of course, another very important area, brain cognitive development. You know, children's brains finish their development at about 25. So researchers say that they're not at all sure when we put children in adult costumes, choreography, and music and turn them into mini adults, they don't know what the long-term effect on a young child is going to be. So it's a pretty serious issue.
You know, you hit a lot of salient points, and the one was the statistic for the development of the brain, which I've mentioned. I believe it was in the New England Journal of Medicine that they did the study, and it was between the age of 25 up to 27 before the human brain is fully developed sexually. Matter of fact, a lot of these kids are confused about their sexuality in school. By the time they hit 18, they have made a decision whether they're heterosexual or not. And I'm sorry, you're either a male, female. There's not 65 different flavors in the gender dish there. But they, at that point, once they turn 18 to 20, they have decided which side of the fence they sit in. And 90% of the time, between 90 to 95% of the time, the kids will go with their biological sex. So I don't understand why they have these parents, like this case in Texas of this poor little 7-year-old boy that the father's trying to save. The mother's trying to sex change him at the age of 7 before he's even hit puberty. This should be deemed child abuse. And once it went to the court, she should have been handcuffed and taken to jail.
Yeah, I think the question that you raise and I raise is, why are we doing this to children? You know, it's one thing for an adult to make a choice, and I may agree or not, but I can be respectful because I live in this country, and people are allowed to make choices. But, you know, 18 and younger, we have children we're dealing with, developing children. And why are we sliding into blurring the lines between childhood and adulthood and saturating them with inappropriate messages about sex? And, of course, a lot of that has come in through media and the Internet. You know, cultural critic Allen Ginsberg said, whoever controls the media, the images, controls the culture. And I just feel like adults have stopped protecting kids, and they've just been spoon-fed all the media saturation of these inappropriate messages with nobody reflecting and saying, now, wait a minute, is this really a good thing? We're all so busy, we've forgotten to use the reflection part of the gift that God has given us.
You know, you do a wonderful job, and God, I'm so glad to have you with us. I definitely have to get you back on again, because they go after the most vulnerable segment of our society to brainwash them. And who is that? The child. And when the child is not in direct hands of the parent, they're in the school system. They are then just perfect prey.
Well, I think you're correct. And I think what we have to focus on is that adults are wired to protect children. And that's our job. And I know we're all busy. But with awareness on these issues, to identify them and to have conversations about them, and then maybe to share courageously in our culture about what we know that the research stands back of. Now, I do think it's very helpful for people to know there are researchers, and, you know, the researchers come from conservative, liberal, base, Republican, Democratic. I have found a lot of people have a very bipartisan interest in protecting children, and that's what I appeal to.
And that is something that we have a problem with in our society today. We don't know how to have a civil conversation. It's the us versus them mentality that is driving a wedge through the center, through the heart of America. Once we walk away from
I couldn't agree more.
Exactly. But they can't gain office unless they do the division. So it's got to be this group versus that group. You have to break them down into segments, multiculturalism instead of the melting pot that the United States should be. We're not 50 different nations here. We are united under one flag, under one constitution.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Would you be open to me sharing some of our dance educational outcomes so your listeners can really understand where I'm coming from and the goals in our organization?
Absolutely. I just want to make 2 points, though. My mom would always say I was the most graceful little girl she had ever known until she took me to dance lessons. She goes, then I became the biggest klutz she ever knew. The other thing is that...
Well, it's probably because they weren't working with you the right way, because children are natural movers. So maybe this is my opportunity to encourage you and say, try it again, even though you're an adult.
At this age, my body just will not go in those directions anymore. It's just past that stage.
Well, I can appreciate that. But, you know, the body is such a beautiful instrument. It hurts my heart when people, you know, think they can't move at all. And, again, I have to lay the foundation of that feeling on a dance educator or a teacher. I think as teachers, as educators, we can help people be comfortable. So I wish you'd had some special teacher that hadn't said that to you. But I also know when I was a little girl, somebody didn't like my art piece, you know, because it wasn't like the other kids' art piece. You know, it was one of those art projects where everybody had to color it the same way and do the same thing. And I did mine differently, and the teacher didn't like it. And I think I decided I wasn't good at art. But, you know, I have a feeling you were given a comment about dancing that's not true. But now you're growing up, so well, right?
I just want to make one correlation between dance and music and the arts and the correlation to mathematics. And good foundations for mathematics does correlate into good performance. Now, I played classical violin, and I was a whiz at math. But now with this Common Core, and now with Seattle coming out with this cockamamie curriculum where they say mathematics is racist and we've got to reteach you and re-educate you on how to do and look at math. You know, it's racist, it's bigoted, look at the history of it, and we've got to re-engineer your brain. And the outcome is needing someone like you to bring it back united again. Now I opened it up for you.
Well,
How's that?
Well, I agree with you, and I think math, is a wonderful connection to dance, because typically, let me just fill you in on a little tidbit, and then I'll go into my educational outcomes. You know, when you integrate mind, body, and spirit, one of the great values of dance is, instead of compartmentalizing, you have to integrate how you think, what you like through your heart, and then move it in your body. And that's what really develops a child's brain in a really positive way. And typically, it helps in math. It helps in reading. And it helps in all kinds of other developmental ways, but you know, there's some direct correlation between a child that begins to take dance class, if they're with a dance educator that understands, pedagogy and the right kinds of goals to give a child, and as they meet those goals, to take them beyond that, they begin to do well in school. So that's well documented and well researched. So folks out there, if your child's not doing so well in math, I would suggest dance class. Healthy, age-appropriate dance class.
Now, what are some of the outcomes of what you do?
Educational outcomes. I decided I needed to clarify, as I began to work in dance awareness, no child exploited, noting that dance awareness, no child exploited, the acronym is DANCE. So it's kind of easy to remember, I hope. I wanted to clarify for people where I'm coming from and what my, long-term goals were. And so I just want your listeners to know that dance exists to protect children from hypersexualization in adult costumes, choreography, and music. And we exist to protect the art of dance, because hypersexualized dance is not the art of dance. It's just pornography, honestly. It's inappropriate in all kinds of ways, of course. Dance also exists to create free research-based materials to give adults informed choices about the differences between healthy or harmful dance. So we're educating people. And I want to underscore the word free. Everything on my website is free. It's all research-based. And then we want to engage in respectful conversations about hypersexualization without shaming or demonizing adults or dance studios, so that there's a path for reflection and changed perspectives. You know, the shouting matches don't tend to produce anything. And I think we can see that nationally on a political scale. And so what I tend to do is just talk with people, show them the data, show them the research. Sometimes, actually more than sometimes, most of the time, people just have been unaware. And I would like to articulate that even dance studios don't always have the awareness to even know that hypersexualization is does not have good outcomes for children. And I'll also say sometimes parents pressure a dance studio to hypersexualize their children, so it runs both ways. And so I have just found to talk with people, to show them the research, has produced a lot of change. Now, the last objective of dance is to communicate the hypersexualization of children in dance and its connection to the public health issue of pornography with bipartisan engagement. So I'm very open to anybody who is on the bandwagon for this issue. And I'm happy to go and speak to any organization that wants to hear about the hypersexualization of children in dance.
There's a lot of things that leads to. It's teaching the child it's absolutely okay to do whatever you think feels right. It's absolutely okay to think that the adult in the room is the stupid one and you as the child is the one that's more important and more intellectual. It's also bringing our society into a moral morass. And I don't even know however else to explain it. But it's everything just seems to be okay. If it feels good, it doesn't matter if it's hurting someone else. It doesn't matter if it has no moral value. It just feels good, so go and do it, and I'm not responsible for my actions anymore. basically is what there's. That's
And
yeah,
true.
and I also think people lack courage, and I understand that because I have my challenges being courageous. But I think we're in such a difficult atmosphere in terms of communication and talking nationally that people are afraid to speak up. But by not speaking up, this is what we have. We have children who are being made into mini adults with adult costumes, choreography, and music just in the dance field, but certainly in other areas. We're seeing the same kind of hypersexualization for children. And adults aren't protecting children. I also think that silence is complicity. And so we have to learn to articulate and be courageous and be calm and give people the data and the research. And I have seen people change.
And you're so right. You're so right because there's a high school, I believe it's Miami, and they have a cheerleading squad. And these are girls, I think, 15, 16, 17 years old. And the way they dress and their movements, when they're in front of a crowd on a football field, is real sexual and seductive.
Yeah,
and they're wearing lacy outfits and
it's really crazy what we're doing to kids.
You wonder, how the parents will allow that to go on and accept that.
Well, I really do think with the advent of the Internet, the access to pornography, and they're making a lot of money on this. Parents are busy, and I have 3 grown children. I identify with that. But I think sometimes busyness takes our eyes off appropriate times to say no and maybe to go to the principal. I wonder at that high school if enough parents went to the principal and said respectfully, I don't know how this has happened, but the dress code for these young people is inappropriate. I think a lot of conversations can stimulate change, but I think parents are accepting what the media, the mass communication, through the airwaves, through a lot of the music stars on TV and radio and in movies, they're hypersexualized, so children want to emulate and copy what their most popular stars do. And actually that's brain development, our mirror neurons. We want to copy what we see. But the difference between a child and an adult is you reflect and think through, why do I want to copy Britney Spears? Or why do I want to copy Miley Cyrus? And as an adult, you would say, well, that doesn't make any sense. And you would say no to that. Well, a child doesn't do that. They just are in the space that they're at 6 years of age or 10 years of age. They don't know what's right or wrong. They don't know what's good for them. And so they just accept what's the stimulation they're given at school, in movies, on the radio, in music, just on and on and on. They just accept it. And really, unless an adult intervenes, they think it's normal.
Well, what do you think about those little beauty pageants they have for young girls? Like Joan, what's her name? Joan Bennett?
John Bennett.
John Bennett.
I don't have a high opinion of that because the criteria to be in those pageants tends to make children look like adults. And I have some scholarly definitions of healthy dance and harmful dance, but the Mary Bodden simple version is when children look like children and dance like children, i.e. caterpillars and stars and, fun little things that they do, that is healthy, age-appropriate dance. And they look like children and they dress like children. But when we see a child, very young child who has heavy makeup on and their hair is styled in an adult way and their clothing is adult clothing and the way they move is based on adult movements, then that is unhealthy dance. So, these beauty pageants disturb me as much as what I'm seeing in this hypersexualization of children and adult costumes, choreography, and music. But and I can say I disagree with that. But I'm trying to narrow my message and speak to the specific issue of dance. Do you know there's a 58% increase in enrollment in dance nationally? And did you know dance studios are not regulated?
Interesting. They regulate
well, it's
daycare.
More than interesting. It's scary, is what it is.
Yeah, that they regulate daycare, but they won't regulate
That's
dropping
right.
your child off to a adult that you do not know intimately, that has not been vetted to see whether or not they're of good moral character, or they haven't been arrested for pornography or any other crime that is harmful and may influence the child. This is interesting to know that the state itself, I'm not saying the federal government, but each state should put something in where dance studios need to have some criteria if you're going to be handling children.
That's right. Your barber has to have some criteria. Your nail person has to have some criteria. My goodness, a person that works with children has to have criteria. My husband and I, when our kids were growing up, we coached soccer. We had to have criteria. So I really am not big on regulation in a lot of areas, but I think in terms of children, I think it should be regulated. And one of the problems in the dance field is there is no one organization that connects all of the dance studios, all of the venues that teach dance. Everybody is totally on their own. Now, there are some organizations, but the membership tends to just collect in a small group of people. If we could have one organization that would have a criteria to open up a dance studio, I think that would help, because then you could check in on those, just like so many other things like the barber or, working with children at school. You have to be fingerprinted. You have to have a little criteria there to teach little people. And I think that's appropriate and what we should do.
That is interesting.
Because actually, if the field is unregulated, you can kind of copy what you see on TV, and you too could open up a dance studio tomorrow. And nobody would question you.
Now, I'm just curious, because I used to do community theater, and I did theater when I was in high school. Afterwards, I ended up playing the part of Laura in The Glass Menagerie, and I found that when working with people...
Love that play. Tennessee Williams.
Yes. The Gentleman Caller. I found that working in that field, people tend to be more progressive and liberal, not conservative in their views. So I'm wondering if that is why these children are becoming so vulnerable to get the message out of the LGBTQXYZ community. They have a program in place in which to make this seem like everything is okay. Having a 7-year-old undergo a sex change transfer without the permission of both parents, that's okay. Pushing to have the men-boys society deemed acceptable under the psychiatric guidelines, that's okay. There's an agenda here to sexualize our society that actually can end up destroying us.
Yeah, I think it's all troubling, but it's particularly troubling for children. And I would say, I can't say that it's more liberal or more conservative. Although I believe in transcendent truth, and I rely on that to guide me personally on a daily basis. But I think a lot of people who do not believe in God still want to protect children. And I really do think that we've had a national explosion in hypersexualization that is damaging children and adults due to the internet and the advent of pornography. And that's why the last dance educational objective is to connect the hypersexualization of children with the public health issue of pornography. And I speak for the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, a fine organization in Washington, D.C., that really is bringing together in a coalition leaders from all over the world to speak out about all these interconnected issues, from hypersexualization of children in dance to trafficking, to prostitution, to, my goodness, any issue in that area. We've just had a flood of material come into our culture, and nobody has said too much about it. And so we're kind of in the midst of what you earlier termed war. I would like to share something exciting with you before we end our time. Okay. When I was at the June National Conference, is that okay, my friends?
Sure. Go ahead.
You have the time for that?
Oh, yeah.
When I was at the June National Conference in Washington, D.C., at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, and spoke there, I brought a filmmaker with me. And we interviewed many national experts who could articulate the problem in dance with hypersexualization. And we filmed them, and we're just about at the end of the raw film right now. It's about 20 minutes. We're getting to the end of that. We will release it probably in January, and I'll have a new PowerPoint that I'll be speaking on. I do have free materials on my website from an ebook that's only 15 pages long, with 4 chapters, what's the new trend in children's dance, how to choose a healthy dance studio, how to avoid a harmful one, and then how to approach your dance studio owner about this issue of hypersexualization. If you think they're a good person, but they really seem to be unaware, it's a respectable approach to give them the research on this. That's the ebook. We have a 4-minute trailer that has been shared on the internet. I got 166,000 hits in January of 2019. But that particular trailer is really effective in sharing this message. We have a newsletter. All of these things are free. And this new resource with these experts, it's Healthy or Harmful Dance. What do the experts say? I think it's going to be riveting. And then, of course, we'll cut a trailer, 4-minute trailer, to be shared out of that 20-minute film. And then I'll be, as I mentioned a minute ago, sharing a new PowerPoint, so I'll be speaking out on this. And so I want your listeners to know I am available to come and speak where I am asked, and if your viewers want to speak on this topic, they just download the PowerPoint on my website. They can speak.
That's absolutely awesome. And it's all free by going to your website, Soul to Soul. That's SOULTOSOLE, choreography.org.
That's true. However, because that's kind of hard to spell, I made a new platform page in Soul to Soul Choreography, and it's just danceawareness.com. Most people can spell dance. Most people can spell awareness. So if you go straight to that, if you don't want to look at the rest of the website, Soul to Soul Choreography provides educational materials to Christians in Christian churches, how to set up a dance ministry. Dance Awareness is structured to provide education and resources to stop the hypersexualization of children in dance with adult costumes, choreography, and music. So whether you're a Christian or you're not, please visit the website. And also email me. I love to get emails. So I'd be happy to hear from your listeners.
That's fantastic. We're still waiting for our next guest to call in, so we've got a few minutes here. You mentioned something important about Christian, because October 4th was the 3rd annual Take Your Bible to School Day, and it arose from the attacks of kids going to school, whether they wore a crucifix or a yarmulke or sat and read the Bible during their free time. And they were being taken to the principal and suspended. But there has been a pushback now over the last couple of years to allow these kids to have their First Amendment right of freedom of religion.
Absolutely. That's religious liberty. And I think we're seeing what's begun to happen in the national conversation, that, we can't have differences. We have to be respectful, but we have to speak up for our differences. That is the basis of religious liberty. And, somebody may be different than you, but you need to be able to articulate your position and why, and they need to be able to articulate their position and why, if it comes to a conversation that you would have. So I think it's really good for people to be aware that this is what is happening and to respectfully speak up and continue to speak up, because we don't want to lose our freedoms.
No. If we ignore our rights, and I've said it many times, even with several of our last guests, it starts at the grassroots. Know what's going on around you. Know who's your dog catcher, your council person, your mayor, or whatever. It starts at the grassroots, and we have to keep pushing and pushing and not let them take away our rights. Mary, you do such a wonderful job. I'm going to add the website to the show page after I get off air, so people will have your new website up there also. And God bless you for the hard work you do, Mary.
Well, God bless you, and thank you for the time and the conversation.
It's our pleasure. Check her out, Mary Bowden, and thank you, and I'll be talking with you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, we got our next victim. Always fun to have him, Congressman Ted Yoho. And I've got my first question to you, Congressman, was when you were in that room, did you order pizza or something else while you were waiting?
When I was in where?
The skiff yesterday.
Oh.
Or the hallway.
No, I wasn't on that one.
Oh, well, they had you down as well.
I didn't go in there with those guys.
But, it made a good point, and it's...
I was...
Go ahead.
It did, and I was in another hearing on foreign affairs. Defending the president.
We need people like you out there defending him. But I loved it when I saw what was going on, because these impeachment proceedings that they have going on is unprecedented. Never has the House not voted to cause the inquiry first before you gather the evidence.
Right, and we've been trying to get Nancy Pelosi to do that, and they just refuse to even hear it, say it's not law that you have to do it, and they're right. But the precedent has been that you always have done this on the other three times. I think it was 74 and 90, 98 with Clinton, 74 with Nixon.
Yeah, it's always been that way.
That sounds right.
Yeah, you do the vote first to open the inquiry, but there's nothing in the Constitution, so Nancy Pelosi is using that instead of using precedent. And yet, on the other hand, when something else comes up, they'll look at precedent and say, listen, this is how we did it because it wasn't defined in the Constitution. This is the way we used to do it. But she switched gears. She flipped everything upside down.
Oh, they use it to their advantage, and it's always right for them, and, it's not right for us. And so it is amazing the double standard that they adhere to.
And the funny thing is that when I was watching what was going on, and I was cheering you guys on, I was like, finally, the Republicans have a spine. They were complaining because a lot of these congressmen and women, it was all congressmen, went into the skiff, and when they realized it, they surrendered all their devices. And yet, they seem to fail to remember that John Lewis did the same exact thing. I believe it was in 1998 with a sit-in, not 1998, it was a sit-in over a gun legislation for 12 hours. And you guys are not supposed to have your smart devices on the floor. You're not supposed to be videotaping anything. But here they were videotaping this sit-in for 12 hours. So it's okay for them, but suddenly it's not okay for you.
Oh, they did that 2 years ago on they were on the House floor and they did the sit-in, ordered Kentucky Fried Chicken. They were raising funds with their cameras, videotaping that, raising funds on the House floor, totally illegal, big ethics violation. Unfortunately, Paul Ryan didn't do a thing about it and just turned the other cheek instead of holding these people accountable. But yet when we do it, and, then they use that narrative, which I got kind of a kick out of. I think it was the old white men or just old boring white men. And it's like, what's that got to do with anything? It's just like, they're trying to change the narrative away from anything but the bad actions that they're doing.
Now, I know you've got legislation coming up, and I was trying to find it because I know Brian sent me some stuff. But I'm a little discombobulated today, so I apologize. But in this sort of situation, they didn't even follow the rules. So it mind boggles me. So forgive me on this one. But at this point, does it look like finally it's going to go to the House floor? Are we finally going to get this out of that little secret cubbyhole and bring it back out to the people?
Yeah, to answer that question, yes. What they're going to do is they're going to take it from Adam Schiff after we get back, and they're going to give it to Nadler, and he's going to bring it up, articles of impeachment. They're going to vote on it in the House floor. It'll pass, and then it'll go to the Senate where it won't be dealt with. I guess once it goes over there, they're going to have to deal with it, but it won't go anywhere. And going back to the process, when John Boehner changed the rules that said that the committees could have subpoena power, and he did that for the investigation of Benghazi and some other things that were going on, the Lois Lerner and, Koskinen, with the IRS. So they changed the rules so they could have subpoena power. They didn't get rid of it, unfortunately. And so the Democrats are using that. But when we had that power, and we were doing the investigations with Nunes about Russian interfering in our elections, Nunes would let the Democrats have their witnesses. They had counsel. They could cross-examine, Republican witnesses and Democrat witnesses. They could keep a paper trail or the minutes of the meeting, the stenographer's notes. They could also access those. In this situation with Schiff, we cannot bring in our own witnesses. We can cross-reference and, cross-question them. We can keep notes with stenographer notes, so we have official records. But if we want to print out notes, we can't print out the Republican notes. We can only print out the Democrat notes that have the Democrats' questions that they ask that are leading, and we can only print them out and read them in the SCIF with a Democrat committee member there. And it's ridiculous what they have done, and it's double standard again.
That is the craziest thing that I've ever heard. It's as if you put a person up for trial. Well, he's up for trial, basically, in this SCIF, and you're only allowed prosecution to speak. Absolutely no defense.
Right.
I'm sorry, the scales of justice just tipped way the wrong direction here.
They really did, Annie. And the other thing is, Nadler, Jerry Nadler, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, had this originally, the investigation or the witch hunt. And he was such an embarrassment to the Democratic Party that his own members tried to get him removed from the committee. Well, they didn't want to shame him. And so what Pelosi did, and she doesn't care much for him, but she likes Schiff, so she took the jurisdiction from Judiciary, where it should be, and took it to the Intelligence Committee, where Schiff could be in charge of it, let him go through his kangaroo court. Then they're going to come up with the recommendation of impeachment, and that'll get rushed through Jerry Nadler's thing, very one-sided, and they'll vote on it on the House floor, and Donald Trump will be impeached by the House. And then it goes to the Senate for trial.
Now, over the
And
weekend...
it's just such a scam and a waste of the taxpayers' money.
Just tremendous waste.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, but the funny thing is, I read an article over the weekend, and figures into fake news, but saying that Mitch McConnell may bring it up, and that threw me for a little bit, because then last night Lindsey Graham went on with his public statement, some sort of a joint statement between he and McConnell, that it's not going to go. So the rest of us are sitting here with bated breath wondering what the heck is going on here.
Yeah, you would think they could be on the same page, don't you?
You think? That's asking a little too much from the American voter.
You would think so.
Yeah, the American voter is just too stupid.
But I am glad. Yeah, I'm glad to see that Attorney General Barr is giving the Inspector General the ability to have a criminal investigation on the corruption, the FISA warrants, because that's where this all started from, and that's where the true investigation needs to go, because that really exposes the deep state. You got Brennan, Clapper, Comey, Loretta Lynch, Hillary Clinton, and it'll go back to President Obama.
Yeah, and
or it should. All those people.
Congressman.
Yeah. Hey, yes.
Do you think if we had Barr instead of Mueller, this would have never gone this far? I mean, from the
probably.
very beginning.
Yeah, because before anybody moves forward, they should have looked at the validity of the FISA warrants. I'm not a lawyer, and I read the intelligence briefing, and I came out of that thinking, I gave him the benefit of the doubt on the first FISA warrant, because that was the Steele dossier. You've got Comey, you've got Carter or Page or Strzok, all saying and verifying that this was vetted, it was accurate, and so the judge signed the FISA warrant. But when it came time to sign the second, third, and fourth warrant, they had already been proved that the Steele dossier was all concocted by Hillary Clinton and GP Fusion, and it was paid for by the DCCC and the Clinton campaign. And so FISA warrant 2, 3, and 4 should never have been signed, and the first one, somebody lied to get that one signed, and that's perjury. Because to sign a FISA warrant, you have to sit in front of the FISA judge. It's a secret court, and you have to verify all this information is accurate. So somebody lied. Somebody needs to be held accountable, and this is what is good about Attorney Barr. He's going after that, and I've got to meet him and talk to him, and he's very serious about what he does. He's real matter of fact, and he doesn't care who's affected by it. He's going to find the facts and expose those.
Well, there's also something between the judge that signed those FISA warrants with a personal relationship with Peter Strzok, where he should have probably, my grammar, good Lord, where'd it go? He should have recused himself. And I said from the very beginning, those FISA warrants were fruit of a poisonous tree that should never have gotten off the judge's desk.
Right, and if I can come up with that, as you have, and I'm not a lawyer, it should have been pretty obvious to the people doing this.
Well, it's all going to come and explode within the next week or so, because it's all going to come out, and the American public is going, this is going to make Watergate look like a kindergarten birthday party. It's coming to a deep head.
Well, and it's going to it is, and it's going to show that the Democrats, that the leaders of the Democratic Party and the people that are really pushing this are incompetent and they're inept, and they should not be trusted with leadership, or they should not be trusted as members of Congress, and they should not be sent back.
No, it should not be, not in the least bit. But it's all going to come out real soon, and not only that, with Hunter Biden, now we've got another country involved, Romania, while his daddy was still vice president. It's one thing after another and after another. And I'm afraid that the American public may get overload and just no longer care about it and just let everything go to the wayside. I think maybe that's what the Democrats are hoping for.
They are, but the tide's turning, and I think you're going to see the Democrats start doing damage control because they know those people that were in the upper echelon of the FBI, that all of a sudden the sights are on them and that they need to start running for cover. And I think you're going to see the Democrats maybe back off the impeachment thing. I don't know. I know you can't use the word quid pro quo anymore, but I can see them saying, I tell you what, we'll bring this impeachment stuff to an end if you get rid of this. I mean, the hypocrisy up there is crazy.
You can use any word you want.
Quid pro quo is bad, but yet...
With us, you can use any word.
So if you're in the Republican Party, to play properly for those of weak spines, you're supposed to donate all this money to the Republican Party to be able to get the committees you want. And the Democrats are the same. But all of a sudden, quid pro quo is bad when it goes to President Trump.
And
well, do you think that this all lead back to Obama?
Curtis, I think it's going to lead back. Because the report I heard today and read is that, who was it? I think it was Clapper talked to President Obama and said, we've got some stuff that you need to investigate. No, it was Comey. And says, I know you don't want to know about this, but you need to know about it. And he signed off on it, is what I heard today. And if that's factual, President Obama had a hand in this somewhere. I'm sure there'll be a veil of plausible deniability around him. But when it comes down to Clapper, Brennan, Loretta Lynch, Hillary Clinton, James Comey, and those Lisa Page, those people, they're going to be held accountable. I feel very confident with Attorney General Barr. Just knowing him and his history, like I said, he's real matter of fact.
Well, the only problem with all of this is that because everyone is so tied up with this impeachment proceeding, that bills are just sitting at the wayside. I mean, there's a bill that you co-sponsored that I would love to see pushed through, H.R. 856, the Physician Pro Bono Act, which you signed on to back in August.
Oh, yeah, that's a great bill.
That's just sitting there. There's another one that you recently...
That's a great bill.
It is. And I it's up in the AMAC magazine from last month, which is when I saw it. I says, well, why isn't this going through? Because the circus is in town, and nothing is going to come off the floor of the House until this proceeding, this impeachment farce, is finally done with. Another one, you have the Social Security Act, which was HR, and I can't read the number in here.
Oh, that's a great bill.
4854.
SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance Act.
Yeah, and these are important issues.
This is how that bill right there, we're reforming Social Security Disability Insurance. In the past, if you were 100% disabled, but yet you could recover from that, what the Social Security Administration did would send you a postcard once every 7 years, and they would ask you, are you able to go back to work? So it was self-reporting. I'm sure some people reported it honestly, but I know a lot of people said, nope, send a card back, so they're on permanent disability for another 7 years. They had regulations from the old days that said if you were the editor of a telegraph company and could not find gainful employment, that you qualified for SSDI. If you were a seal killer, like the baby harp seals, and you could not find employment, you qualified for Social Security Disability Insurance. And so these things have not been updated. And so we reform all that. We make checks and balances in there. And over a 10-year period of time, it's supposed to save, I want to say, $118 or $180 billion.
Wow.
But more importantly, it'll increase the longevity of that program. And so we don't have to worry about it going bankrupt. We'll extend it out another 25, 30 years just by the reforms.
It's funny because when I was granted my disability, and this was all in the line of duty, every 2 years I would get these forms in, and I had to explain what I could do, what I couldn't do. had it been approved by a doctor or what my medications were, what doctor visits I had, what physical therapy, what surgeries. And you had this extensive thing that you had to fill out every 2 years and then document the fact that what you were putting
Now, when
down
was
on
that? When was that?
I have not seen one now.
When was that? What year?
I would have to go through my files because I kept everything. Everything's in a file drawer, everything I sent in. I have not seen one, I would say, probably in the last 8 years. So I will look at that date and I'll get that information over to you. And I'll copy the form because it's got my number and everything on there. But I'll send it over to Brian so you can look at what was asked and what you had to prove and cross-reference with the actual date and who you saw.
And then under the previous administration, they changed a lot of that reporting and stretched out the time period.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so we're reforming that. Yeah.
Wow. Just imagine how many more billions by just having them do these forms every 2 years again. Well, Ted, we're down to our last 5 minutes.
Well,
go ahead.
Okay.
No, go finish what you were saying.
I appreciate you letting me be on.
Well, you do a hard work, a hard job, and we see you out there, and we cheer you on every single inch. And thank you. We need more Ted Yohos, more Louis Gohmerts, people like that, more Scalise's. We need more of you back in the house.
Definitely.
Well, we got the greatest country on the earth, and we've got a nation to save, and this is where we all need to come together, not as Republicans or Democrats, but as Americans. And, with shows like yours, I know you're going to get that message out there to folks. So I appreciate the opportunity to be on.
Well, it is our pleasure, and drive safely because I know you're heading home for the weekend, and come back fighting, Ted. We'll bring you the gloves.
All right.
God bless.
Thank you, ma'am. Y'all take care. See you, Curtis. Say hi to Caroline.
All right. Bye-bye.
Ted Yoho. Oh, man, I always love talking to him. He's such a pleasure. But we've got great shows coming up later on this month. I don't have the guests in front of me because I got a little discombobulated with the change-up that we had today. So I'm sorry I fudged it somewhat, Curtis. But, hey, we'll get our act together next week.
Oh, yeah. We'll be back in form.
Well, I want to say thank you for everyone that joined us up on the Facebook page. Great comments over there. Also, those that were in the chat room. Sorry about the mess up with the chat room on Blog Talk Radio, but they changed the way they did the chat room, if anyone noticed, and it just threw me off. So I put it into a mode I shouldn't have. I won't do that again. So I'll leave everyone wishing them a healthy, happy weekend, to be safe out there, with our closing song by Gary Picarella, Save America. So until then, I say good night and God bless.
I'm praying for this land I love, America, America, the home of the free. But there are people making plans to change America. They've no respect for her or what matters most to me. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. For the friends I have loved and lost, and I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us. I hope it's not too late to save America. America, we've got to rescue her. You know it's up to me to see the truth behind their lies. Don't change America. God bless America and the red, white, and blue. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. For the friends I have loved and lost, and I still believe in God we trust. held our forefathers' guidance. I hope it's not too late to say
90 seconds.
America.
60 seconds.
We stand and fly, yet we kneel at the cross. For the friends we have loved and lost, then we still